Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back, way back to the sweltering labyrinthine streets of 17th century Cairo. Imagine the air thick with the scent of spices, dust, sweat, and something else. Something a little strange perhaps, a bit pungent, definitely mysterious. You're pushing through crowds past merchants hawking wares. You can't quite name the cacophony of street life, a constant hum around you. Donkeys laden with goods nudge past, veiled women glide by, and the sun beats down, reflecting off the ancient stone. It's a world utterly unlike your own, and frankly, if you actually had to live through it, armed only with their medical knowledge, you probably wouldn't survive the week. This was a time when healing arts were a fascinating, sometimes terrifying blend of ancient wisdom, practical experience, superstition, and ingredients that would make your modern stomach churn. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're here in 1600s Cairo. The call to prayer has just faded, mingling with the general din of the marketplace. You navigate the narrow alleyways, the walls of the buildings pressing in, close offering slivers of shade that are a welcome relief from the relentless North African sun. The ground beneath your worn sandals is uneven, a mix of packed earth and cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of foot traffic and animal hooves. Around you, vendors shout, trying to entice you with everything from dried dates and fragrant perfumes to lengths of colorful fabric and intricately worked metal goods. There's a symphony of sounds. The braying of donkeys, the chatter of a dozen languages, the rhythmic hammering from a metalworker's stall, the distant splash of water from a public fountain, and the smells. Oh, the smells. The sweet, sickly scent of rotting fruit blends with the sharp tang of animal waste, the warm aroma of baking bread, and the heavy perfume of incense wafting from a nearby mosque. It's overwhelming, a thick, complex olfactory tapestry that immediately tells you you are far, far from anything familiar. You're seeking a place of healing, a shop known to dispense remedies for what ails you. Not a doctor's house necessarily, though they exist, but an apothecary on your tar, as they might be called here, someone who deals in the preparation and sale of medicinal substances. You've heard whispers of their power, seen the signs depicting mortars and pestles. You turn a corner ducking under a low awning, and the air changes. The general market stench recedes, replaced by a different, perhaps even more complex blend of aromas. This is it. You found an apothecary shop. From the outside, it might not look dramatically different from its neighbors. A sturdy wooden door, perhaps open wide, framed by a simple archway. Maybe a few pots of plants sit outside, some familiar, some utterly alien to your eyes. Above the door, there might be a sign, not necessarily written words you can read, but perhaps a depiction of a mortar and pestle, the universal symbol of the healer who grinds and mixes. Or maybe it shows a specific plant or animal part, hinting at the specialties within. The light filtering from the street doesn't fully penetrate the interior. It looks cool and dim after the glare outside. There's a sense of quiet order here, a stark contrast to the chaotic market outside. You step over the threshold and the transition is immediate and profound. The noise of the street fades, muffled by the thick walls and the sheer density of the contents within. The air inside is thick, heavy with 1,000 scents. Spices you recognize, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, mingle with the dry, earthy smell of roots and herbs. But there are other notes too, something acrid, something musky, something perhaps slightly metallic or even faintly animalic. It's not necessarily unpleasant, but it is foreign and intense. It prickles your nose and settles in your throat. Your eyes adjust to the gloom. The shop is relatively small, perhaps one main room, but it feels packed floor to ceiling with things. Wooden shelves line the walls, laden with jars, pots, boxes, and bundles. Glass phials gleam dully, filled with liquids of various colors. Dark syrups, opaque emulsions, clear oils. Ceramic jars hold powders and pastes. Wooden boxes are stacked neatly, perhaps containing dried leaves, flowers, or bark. Bunches of dried herbs hang from the ceiling, swaying gently in the faint breeze from the open door. It's a visual feast of textures and containers, each promising some form of relief or change. Behind a sturdy wooden counter, which serves as both a workspace and a barrier, stands the apothecary himself. He might be an older man, his face lined with experience, and perhaps a certain weariness from years spent hunched over ingredients. Or perhaps he is younger, apprenticed in the trade, his movements quick and precise. His clothing is simple but clean, perhaps stained here and there, with the telltale marks of his craft. He has an air of quiet authority, an understanding of the potent substances surrounding him. He looks at you with a steady gaze, assessing you. Your posture, perhaps the subtle signs of your ailment already visible on your face or in your walk. The counter itself is a stage for action. Scattered across its surface are various tools of the trade. Mortars and pestles made of stone wood or even metal sit ready for grinding. Small scales, perhaps made of brass or copper, hang or sit waiting to weigh precious ingredients. Knives and spatulas lie nearby, used for cutting, scraping, and mixing. There might be a small brazier or burner used for heating liquids or preparing concoctions. The surface of the counter is likely worn smooth, a testament to countless hours of preparation. Around you, the shelves hold an astonishing variety of items. You might see familiar dried plants, chamomile, mint, possibly something resembling lavender, but they are nestled alongside things you can't possibly identify. Dried roots that look like gnarled fingers, bags of what might be seeds or berries of unknown origin, strangely shaped stones, vials containing liquids that shimmer with an unsettling iridescence. Some jars might contain things that look distinctly non-plant. Perhaps a preserved organ floating in liquid. Yes, that was a thing, or small bones, or dried insects. Your modern sensibilities recoil slightly, but you try to maintain a calm exterior. This is their science, their medicine. A mainstream historical fact about Cairo at this time is that it was a major intellectual and commercial hub, sitting astride crucial trade routes linking the Mediterranean, Africa, and Asia. This geographical position meant apothecaries here had access to an incredibly diverse range of substances from vast distances, spices from the East, herbs from Europe, minerals from Africa. Their shelves weren't just stocked with local flora, but with exotic imports that were highly prized and often astronomically expensive. This access to a global pharmacopoeia, even if they didn't fully understand the active properties by modern standards, distinguished major urban centers like Cairo. As you stand there taking it all in, the apothecary waits patiently. He doesn't rush you. People come here with hope, sometimes with desperation, and the transaction is more than just a purchase. It's an appeal for relief. The atmosphere is one of quiet industry and ancient knowledge. There's a rhythmic sound you might hear from a back room, perhaps the steady thump, thump, thump of a large mortar and pestle as an assistant grinds ingredients into a fine powder or paste, or the soft clink of glass vials being moved. You might notice details that seem utterly bizarre from your perspective. For instance, tucked away on a shelf, perhaps, near some potent-looking herbs, you might spot a small dried chameleon, its skin papery and brittle. A quirky or fringe tidbit from this era's medicine is the belief in sympathetic magic, that consuming a part of an animal or plant with a particular quality could transfer that quality to the patient. A chameleon's ability to change color was sometimes linked to treating skin conditions or perhaps even unstable moods, though historians still argue whether the primary rationale was purely symbolic magic, observed effect however misinterpreted, or simply tradition passed down through generations. You see the chameleon and a shiver goes down your spine, a mix of curiosity and unease. The shop is more than just a place of business. It's a repository of accumulated knowledge passed down through apprenticeship and texts, some ancient, some more recent. The apothecary's skill lies not just in dispensing ingredients, but in understanding which ones to combine in what proportions and how to prepare them. Whether to boil, steep, grind, or burn. He might consult large handwritten volumes, the pages brittle with age, filled with recipes and descriptions of ailments. These texts would draw from Greek, Roman, Persian, Indian, and local traditions, creating a fascinating, syncretic medical system. Standing here, you can feel the weight of history. People have been coming to places like this for centuries, seeking cures, placing their faith in the apothecary's expertise. It's a reminder that while the forms of medicine change, the fundamental human desire for healing, for relief from suffering, remains constant. But looking at the shelves filled with strange substances, some of which seem frankly terrifying, is that powdered stone, you can't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude for the clean, sterile pharmacies of your own time. You just hope whatever remedy you're about to ask for doesn't involve anything too exotic or painful, or likely to just make things worse. You stand there a stranger in this ancient, fragrant space, and the apothecary's steady gaze is upon you. He doesn't speak immediately, allowing you to soak in the atmosphere perhaps, or simply observing. You feel a faint sense of unease under his scrutiny, as if he's seeing more than you're showing. He has an air of quiet competence, a deep well of knowledge hidden behind calm eyes. You shift your weight, feeling the slight ache in your limbs, the dull throb behind your temples. You came here seeking relief, and now that you're face to face with the healer, your specific ailment feels a little less abstract, a little more real and pressing. He finally speaks, his voice low and measured, cutting through the background sounds of the shop and the distant city. The language is perhaps not exactly what you're used to, but somehow, through some historical magic, you understand him perfectly. He asks what troubles you. What brings you to his shop today? You try to articulate your symptoms. The fatigue that clings to you like a heavy cloak, the fever that ebbs and flows, leaving you alternately chilled and sweating, the headache that makes your skull feel too small for your brain. You describe how long it's been going on, how it started, anything you think might be relevant. As you speak, he nods slowly, occasionally, interjecting with a question. He might ask about your diet recently. Have you eaten anything unusual? Are you consuming hot or cold foods? What about your sleep? Are your dreams troubled? Yes, even your dreams. In this medical system, dreams were often seen as indicators of the body's internal state, reflecting imbalances in the humors or the influence of external forces. A feverish dream might be interpreted differently from a dream of flying or falling. He might inquire about your daily activities, your exposure to heat or cold, your emotional state. Are you stressed, sad, angry? Every detail, no matter how insignificant it might seem to you, could be a clue to him. He might step closer, perhaps reaching across the counter to gently take your wrist. His fingers, surprisingly cool and firm, rest on your pulse. He closes his eyes, concentrating, feeling the rhythm and strength of your heartbeat. Pulse diagnosis was a highly developed art in Islamic medicine, with physicians discerning dozens, even hundreds of different pulse qualities, each signifying a specific condition or imbalance. A quick, thready pulse might mean one thing, a slow bounding pulse another. He's reading your body's internal rhythm like a book you can't even see. You hold your breath, trying not to let your nervousness interfere with your natural beat. A mainstream historical fact is that the medical system prevalent in 17th century Cairo, as in much of the Islamic world, was largely based on the humoral theory inherited from ancient Greek physicians like Hippocrates and refined by figures like Galen and later Islamic scholars such as Ibn Sina Avicenna. This theory posited that the body was governed by four humors: blood phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and that illness resulted from an imbalance of these humors. Diagnosis involved assessing a patient's temperament, symptoms, diet, and lifestyle to determine which humor was in excess or deficient, and treatment aimed to restore balance, often through diet lifestyle changes, and administering substances believed to have hot or cold, wet or dry properties to counteract the imbalance. Your fever and fatigue, for example, would immediately suggest an imbalance he would need to correct. He releases your wrist and steps back, his expression thoughtful. He might murmur something to himself, perhaps referencing a combination of symptoms that points him in a certain direction. He surveys his shelves again, his eyes moving over the jars and bundles. You can almost see the gears turning in his mind as he considers the vast array of substances available to him, weighing their properties and potential effects. Should he prescribe something to cool the heat of your fever? Something to strengthen your vital spirit? Something to purge the offending humor from your system? He might pull down a large-bound volume from a shelf, its pages crackling slightly as he opens it. This is likely a pharmacopoeia or a medical treatise, a compilation of known remedies and their uses, perhaps including diagrams or detailed descriptions of how to prepare specific concoctions. He scans the text, his finger tracing lines of script you cannot read. This book represents generations of accumulated knowledge blended with practical experience and perhaps a dash of regional specificity. It's a tangible link to the long lineage of healers who came before him in this city. As he reads or considers, you notice something else on his counter, something that makes you do a double take. Tucked beside a mortar and pestle, there's a small, intricately carved wooden box. A quirky or fringe tidbit from this era is the use of amulets and talismans as part of the healing process, often alongside physical remedies. While mainstream physicians focused on humors and natural substances, many people, and even some healers, believed in the power of inscribed versus symbols or specific materials worn or kept close to the body to ward off illness, evil spirits, or bad luck that might contribute to sickness. Historians still argue whether this was considered a purely spiritual adjunct to physical treatment, a placebo effect they intuitively understood or genuinely believed to influence the body's health through unseen forces. The presence of the amulet box suggests that for this apothecary, or at least his clientele, the boundary between the physical and the metaphysical aspects of healing was perhaps more fluid than your modern mind is comfortable with. He closes the book with a soft thud and turns back to you. He has made his decision. Based on your symptoms, your pulse, your answers, and his knowledge of humors and remedies, he knows what you need. He begins to gather ingredients from the shelves. You watch him fascinated as he reaches for various jars and boxes. He might measure out a powder here, select a handful of dried leaves, then pour a small amount of liquid from a vial. His movements are precise, born of long practice. He knows exactly where everything is in his well-stocked shop. He might bring a mortar and pestle to the counter and begin grinding. The rhythmic sound starts up soft at first, then stronger, as he transforms solid substances into fine powders or smooth pastes. The air around the counter fills with new specific scents: the sharp tang of a certain root, the subtle sweetness of a flower, the earthy aroma of dried bark. He might add a liquid, perhaps rose water, used not just for scent, but believed to have cooling properties, or a syrup made from dates, or honey, often used as a base or carrier for other ingredients. He mixes and blends, a quiet alchemist, transforming raw materials into a potential cure. You stand patiently observing this ancient ritual of preparation. It's a far cry from popping a pill or taking a liquid from a prepackaged bottle. Here the medicine is made fresh, tailored, specifically it seems to your needs. There's a sense of connection to the process. Seeing the raw ingredients, hearing the sounds of their transformation, smelling their concentrated essence. It feels real, even if some of the ingredients make you slightly apprehensive. You trust that he knows what he's doing, that this blend created by his hands and knowledge will help you. He is deep in his task now, meticulously weighing, measuring, and combining. The rhythmic scrape of the pestle against the mortar continues, a soothing, almost hypnotic sound. He might add a pinch of this, a dash of that, his movements confident and practiced. You watch his hands deft and sure as they manipulate the raw substances. He might pour a viscous liquid from a dark glass bottle, perhaps something thick and syrupy designed to bind the ingredients together or make the final product more palatable, or maybe something surprisingly clear, but with a potent medicinal smell that makes your nose wrinkle slightly. He might turn to a small brazier glowing with embers. A pot or a glass flask is placed over the heat. He pours the ground mixture into it, perhaps adding more liquid. The heat begins to work its magic, blending the ingredients on a molecular level, releasing their essence into a steaming, fragrant, or perhaps not so fragrant concoction. You can almost feel the warmth emanating from the brazier, a stark contrast to the coolness of the stone floor beneath your feet. The steam rises, carrying the complex aroma of the brewing remedy, notes of spice earth, maybe something floral, but definitely something else. Something animal, perhaps, or mineral. It's hard to place, and it makes you a little uneasy. You remember hearing tales, whispers about the kinds of things these old apothecaries used, things you wouldn't find in your local pharmacy today, unless it was Halloween, and they were selling novelty candies. And as he continues his work, you catch glimpses of the ingredients he's using, confirming some of those whispers. He might reach for a jar labeled with unfamiliar script, and you see him carefully measuring out a small amount of dried something. Is that lizard skin? Possibly. What about that dark, lumpy substance, Could that be pulverized mummy dust? It wouldn't be out of the question. Yes, using parts of mummies, or what were believed to be mummies, for medicinal purposes was a practice that persisted for centuries, though its efficacy is, shall we say, debatable. You try not to visibly flinch. He might then pick up something shiny and black, perhaps adding it to the mortar before it goes into the pot. Bitumen, maybe. That sticky asphalt-like substance was used in various remedies, sometimes ingested, sometimes applied topically, or maybe it's something even stranger. Powdered gemstones, perhaps. They were believed to have healing properties based on their color or origin. Or animal parts you'd rather not think about, bones, hooves, organs, all found their way into historical pharmacopoeias. It's a bizarre pharmacy of the natural and perhaps unnatural world. You find yourself wondering if he has a secret ingredient that's just a ridiculously large amount of sugar to mask whatever horrors he's mixing in? Probably not. A quirky or fringe tidbit is the belief that certain animal parts were particularly potent for specific ailments, often based on sympathetic magic. The idea that like affects like. Bear bile for courage, eagle feathers for clear sight, or more relevant here, perhaps something from a creature known for its vitality or resilience was used to treat weakness or chronic illness. While physicians relied on humoral theory, the popular belief in the power of these often grotesque animal ingredients was widespread, bridging the gap between formal medicine and folk remedies. You definitely see him adding a small dried organ-like piece to the pot, and you quickly look away. He stirs the mixture slowly as it heats the steam, now carrying a stronger, more pungent odor. It's a smell that speaks of decay and potency, of things pulled from the earth and things that once lived. It's the smell of old secrets and desperate hopes. You try to breathe shallowly, but the aroma seems to cling to the air, seeping into your clothes. It's certainly not the pleasant, sterile smell of a modern doctor's office. It makes you appreciate the simple cleanliness of rubbing alcohol honestly. He might hum softly to himself as he works a low, tuneless melody that adds to the surreal atmosphere. It's like watching a chef prepare a meal, except this meal is for your insides and the ingredients look like something you'd find in a horror movie prop box. You suppress a shiver. You really hope this works, and that you don't suddenly grow an extra limb or start seeing things that aren't there. Though given the ingredients, maybe seeing things that aren't there is a likely side effect. A mainstream historical fact is that many ingredients used in 17th century remedies, while seemingly bizarre to us, were based on centuries of empirical observation and traditional knowledge passed down through generations, combined with the theories of the humors. Substances like opium, cannabis, mercury compounds, and various herbs we still recognize today, though perhaps used differently, were standard components of the Apothecaries toolkit. The challenge was that effective remedies were mixed with ineffective or downright harmful ones, often without a clear understanding of dosage or long-term effects. So while you might be getting a dose of beneficial poppy extract, you could also be getting something else entirely less helpful, like say ground-up bat wings, also a thing. He carefully lifts the pot from the heat. The mixture has reduced slightly, becoming thicker, more concentrated. He pours it into a small clay cup or a narrow-necked glass bottle. The color is murky, perhaps a deep brown, a dull green, or an unsettling reddish black. It looks potent. It definitely doesn't look tasty. You imagine trying to swallow this concoction, and your throat already feels tight. Maybe he has some honey to go with it, or a strong chaser. Probably not. You're just expected to gulp it down like a good patient. Historians still argue whether the inclusion of truly bizarre or seemingly magical ingredients like mummy dust or animal parts was primarily driven by genuine medical theory based on their perceived properties within the humoral system, or sympathetic magic, deliberate charlatanism preying on superstition, or simply the desperate use of any substance that might offer relief in an era with limited effective treatments. Perhaps it was a complex mix of all three, with different practitioners falling along different points on that spectrum. Your apothecary, with his thoughtful demeanor and his strange ingredients, keeps you guessing. Is he a learned physician applying all available knowledge, or a hopeful experimenter, or something else entirely? He wipes his hands on a cloth, his work complete. The remedy is ready. It sits there on the counter, a tangible result of his diagnosis and preparation, a physical embodiment of ancient medical knowledge, and possibly some questionable choices in ingredients. It's your hope for relief sitting there, looking like mud filtered through disappointment. He gestures towards it, indicating that it's for you. The moment of truth is approaching. You have to take it. All those strange, potentially creepy ingredients mixed together just for you. You swallow, bracing yourself for the taste, the texture, and the unknown effects of this 17th century cure-all. You briefly consider just running out the door and embracing the fever, but you've come this far. He might offer brief instructions. Take it now, take it before bed, take it with food, take it on an empty stomach. Perhaps he tells you how often to take it or what signs to look for as it begins to work. His instructions are concise, authoritative. He hands the cup or bottle to you. It feels surprisingly heavy. You hold it staring at the dark, mysterious liquid inside. It doesn't smell as bad now that it's cooled slightly, but it still has that underlying strangeness. This is it. Your journey into the world of creepy 1600s Cairo apothecaries culminates in this moment holding your personalized, potentially terrifying potion. Good luck with that, honestly. Hope it's not too chunky. You hold the cup, the clay cool and slightly rough against your palm. The liquid inside shifts, catching the faint light filtering through the small shop window. It's opaque, a color that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, a deep, unsettling shade of brownish green like pond scum after a particularly bad week. There are tiny flecks suspended in it, swirling slowly as you tilt the cup slightly. You try not to think about what those flecks might be. Dried herb particles, bits of something else. Your mind supplies possibilities you desperately try to push away. Mummy dust, lizard skin, maybe even a tiny piece of dried bat wing, just for good measure. You hope your imagination is running wild, but after seeing some of the ingredients the apothecary handled, you're not entirely confident. The smell is still present, though less overwhelming than the steam was. It's a complex aroma. Earthy notes, yes, but overlaid with something sharp and medicinal, and underneath that something undeniably animal or mineral. It's not the clean antiseptic smell you associate with medicine today. It's the smell of the ancient world of desperation and empirical knowledge blended with superstition. It smells like it should work, perhaps because it smells so potent, so unlike anything you've ever willingly put near your mouth. Or it smells like it's going to give you a whole new set of problems on top of the ones you already have. The apothecary watches you, his expression unreadable, but patient. He doesn't rush. He doesn't badger you. He simply presents the remedy, and now it's your turn to fulfill your part of this transaction. You are the patient, and this is the cure. You could technically just leave, walk out the door back into the bustling, noisy streets of 17th century Cairo and just deal with whatever ailment brought you here. But you sought out this apothecary for a reason. Maybe you heard tales of his successes, maybe you're truly desperate, or maybe you've just come this far and your curiosity or perhaps stubbornness won't let you back down. Plus, the idea of having gone through all that awkward observation of him mixing potentially horrifying things only to chicken out now feels anticlimactic. You'd feel like a bit of a wuss, frankly. You take a deep breath, or try to. The strange aroma makes you want to breathe shallowly through your mouth. This is it, the moment of truth, or possibly the moment of inevitable regret. You raise the cup to your lips. The clay feels cool against your skin, a small comfort in the face of the impending unpleasantness. You glance one last time at the murky liquid, its surface still and uninviting. No turning back now. You tilt the cup further. The liquid is thick, viscous, not like water or juice. It pours slowly, coating the inside of the cup as it moves. It hits your tongue, and your immediate reaction is a jolt of pure, unadulterated wrongness. The taste is complex, bitter, overwhelmingly bitter, but not a clean, medicinal bitterness. It's an earthy, acrid bitterness, like chewing on roots and soil. And beneath that, there's a pungent, metallic tang. Maybe that's the mineral component, or something worse. There's also a strange sweetness mixed in, possibly from honey or fruit syrup, added to make it palatable. But it only serves to make the other flavors more confusing and offensive. It's like someone tried to sweeten a mouthful of dirt and copper coins. Your taste buds are staging a full-scale rebellion. The texture is challenging. It's not smooth. Those flecks you saw earlier are definitely there, gritty and palpable against your tongue and throat as you try to swallow. It's thick, almost syrupy, making it difficult to get down quickly. You can feel it coating your mouth, lingering on your tongue, the flavor refusing to dissipate. It's like trying to swallow liquid mud, but mud that also tastes vaguely of old socks and regret. You feel a wave of nausea wash over you, a strong urge to just spit it all out and wipe your tongue on the nearest clean surface. But you know you can't. You have to get it down. Every last drop. Because if you don't, what was the point of all this? You force yourself to swallow the muscles in your throat, protesting. It goes down slowly, leaving a burning trail. The taste lingers, a potent reminder of the strange brew you just consumed. You might cough a short, involuntary hack as your body tries to expel the foreign substance. Your eyes water slightly. You've definitely had more pleasant experiences, like accidentally stepping on a Lego brick in the dark. This ranks somewhere below that. You lower the empty cup, holding it out to the apothecary. Your mouth feels coated, the unpleasant aftertaste settling in for what feels like a long visit. You resist the urge to immediately grab a drink of water, assuming there's any available, and assuming it wouldn't just make things worse. You try to compose yourself to appear stoic and accepting, like a seasoned veteran of terrible-tasting medicine, even though your insides are churning. The apothecary takes the cup back, his movement smooth and silent. He doesn't smile, doesn't offer a word of encouragement or commiseration about the taste. He just nods, a small, acknowledging gesture. It's as if he knows how bad it is, but considers it a necessary part of the process. Like, yes, it tastes like compressed despair, but it's medicine. You appreciate his lack of fuss, even if you desperately wanted someone to offer you a mint or a piece of candy right about now. A mainstream historical fact is that remedies in the 17th century were often incredibly unpleasant to take. Ingredients were raw or minimally processed. Bitter herbs, foul-smelling animal products, and harsh minerals were common, and methods of masking taste were limited compared to modern pharmaceuticals. Syrups and honeys were used, as you potentially just experienced, but they rarely fully disguised the underlying flavors. The very unpleasantness was often seen as a sign of potency. If it tasted awful, it must be working right. It's a kind of perverse logic, but understandable in an era without chemical analysis or placebos. You could definitely argue that the sheer willpower required to choke down some of these concoctions might have had a psychosomatic effect, a sort of, it hurts so bad it must be doing something good kind of deal. You stand there for a moment waiting for something to happen. A sudden surge of energy, a miraculous disappearance of your symptoms, or perhaps a transformation into a small, scaly creature. The possibilities given the ingredients feel wide open. You focus inward, trying to detect any subtle shifts in your body. Does the fever feel less intense? Is that ache less sharp? Or do you just feel slightly nauseous and regretful? It's hard to tell, honestly. Sometimes the effects of medicine, even modern medicine, aren't instantaneous. You know this logically, but having just ingested a potion that might contain dried viper or something, you're perhaps expecting a more dramatic or immediate result, or at least a sign that you haven't just poisoned yourself. Historians still argue whether the perceived effectiveness of many of these complex, often unpleasant remedies was due to any active ingredients they contained. Some certainly did, like opium or certain herbs. The placebo effect, believing it would work, or simply the natural course of diseases, many of which would resolve on their own anyway. The sheer variety of ingredients, often combined in massive quantities, makes it difficult for modern science to isolate potential therapeutic compounds or prove efficacy, especially for those remedies incorporating truly bizarre or inert substances. It's a complex puzzle of pharmacology, psychology, and public health in an era long past. Did the mummy powder actually do anything? Or did people just believe it did because they were told it would? You, having just swallowed something that might contain it, are suddenly very invested in that debate. A quirky or fringe tidbit about this era's medicine is the concept of simples versus compounds. While skilled apothecaries mixed complex compounds with dozens of ingredients, many people also relied on simples. Remedies made from just one or two substances, often local herbs or animal products based on folk knowledge. This dichotomy existed alongside the formal learned medicine, and patients might seek out both, depending on their means and beliefs. Your apothecary seems to lean towards the complex compound end of the spectrum, evidenced by the sheer number of things he seemed to throw into that pot. You're definitely getting the full 17th century kitchen sink treatment with this one, No simple chamomile tea for you. You stand there feeling the residue of the potion in your mouth and the strange weight of it in your stomach. The apothecary doesn't offer further instructions or conversation. His attention already turning back to his work, perhaps tidying up the mortar and pestle, or labeling another jar. He's done his part. The rest is up to the remedy and to you. You feel a bit dismissed, but also relieved that the ordeal of drinking it is over. Now comes the waiting game. Will you feel better? Will you feel worse? Will you suddenly have an inexplicable craving for flies? Only time will tell. You might politely thank him the word feeling a little forced past the lingering taste. He might nod again or just continue his task. The interaction is brief transactional. You sought his help, he provided a remedy, you consumed it. That's the rhythm of this world. There's no follow-up appointment scheduled, no pamphlet detailing potential side effects, which honestly might be a good thing, given the ingredients. You're on your own now, armed with a stomach full of 17th century magic and science, however you want to classify it. You turn towards the door, ready to leave the relatively quiet, potent-smelling interior of the apothecary shop and step back out into the vibrant, chaotic street. As you move, you become acutely aware of the feeling in your body. Is that a warmth spreading through your chest, or just indigestion? Is that your fever breaking, or are you about to sweat profusely? It's impossible to say immediately. The placebo effect is a powerful thing, but so is the effect of ingesting things that probably shouldn't be ingested. It's a fascinating, if slightly terrifying experiment you've just willingly participated in. As you reach the doorway, you might catch one last glimpse of the apothecary, perhaps carefully storing away a jar filled with something you really hope wasn't in your potion. Maybe it's just ground up beetles, which oddly enough sounds almost mundane now compared to some of the other possibilities. You step outside the sunlight, or perhaps the evening gloom depending on the time of day, a sudden change after the dimness of the shop. The sounds of the street rush in. Merchants calling out, donkeys braying, the general murmur of hundreds of people going about their lives. You are back in the world, but you are changed, however subtly, by the strange experience you just had inside. You have taken the plunge. You have swallowed the creepy cure-all. Now you just have to hope it works and that the side effects aren't too exciting, or at least that you don't suddenly develop a strong urge to climb walls. That would be awkward. You walk away from the shop, the taste still faintly lingering in your mouth, a constant reminder of the potent brew you just consumed. Your stomach gurgles slightly. Is that a good sign or a bad sign? Hard to say. The bustling street feels both real and slightly surreal now. You've stepped into a hidden corner of this ancient city, a place where medicine and magic science and superstition blended together in ways that seem utterly alien to your modern sensibilities. And you've taken a piece of it literally into yourself. The journey isn't over. You've just reached the first milestone. The effects, whatever they may be, are yet to fully reveal themselves. The adventure continues one slightly nauseating step at a time. You're walking, one foot in front of the other, navigating the uneven packed earth or cobbled surfaces of the Cairo streets. The sounds of the city wash over you. The distant call to prayer, the closer clatter of hooves and cartwheels, the rhythmic shouts of street vendors advertising their wares. But your focus isn't entirely outward. It's inward, a hyper-awareness of every subtle sensation in your own body. The taste is still there, a ghost of the unpleasant brew clinging to your tongue and the back of your throat. You keep swallowing, trying to clear it, but it seems determined to stay a constant reminder of the strange concoction you just ingested. It's like that time you accidentally licked a rusty penny as a kid, but somehow worse, and it just won't go away. Your stomach feels unsettled, not violently ill, at least not yet, but definitely not happy. There's a vague churning sensation, a sort of low-level protest from your digestive system. Is it the start of the remedy working? Or is it just your body having a perfectly rational reaction to being force-fed, something that tasted like a badger's compost heap? You can't be sure. You try to recall the apothecary's face, his calm demeanor. He didn't look like a man who regularly poisoned his customers. That's comforting, isn't it? You cling to that thought. He seemed knowledgeable, confident. This must be normal. This internal upheaval must be a sign that the powerful ingredients are battling your ailment, locked in a microscopic skirmish within your very being. Or you know it could just be indigestion. You feel a slight warmth spreading through your chest. Is that a good sign? A sign of vital humors being restored to balance? Or is it just heartburn from whatever questionable mineral was in that brew? You slow your pace slightly, leaning against a sun-drenched wall to observe the street traffic for a moment, giving yourself a chance to just feel. You close your eyes for a second, focusing. Nothing dramatic happens. No sudden visions, no spontaneous sprouting of extra limbs. Thank goodness, no sudden ability to speak ancient Egyptian. Just the churning gut, the lingering taste, and a growing sense of uncertainty mixed with faint nausea. The streets are a sensory overload, a perfect distraction from your internal state, and yet your mind keeps drifting back to it. You see a group of merchants haggling animatedly over spices, the air thick with the scent of cumin, coriander, and something sharp and unknown. Normally, you'd be fascinated observing the vibrant exchange. But right now, the smell of spices just makes your stomach lurch a little more. You politely decline when a vendor tries to sell you some sweet pastries, the very idea of putting more food into your protesting system feeling like a profound act of self-sabotage. You walk past a mosque, the intricate patterns on the stone, a testament to centuries of artistry. You appreciate the beauty, the history, but part of your brain is still cataloging your physical sensations. Is that ache in your joints lessening? Is that headache fading? Or are you just thinking so hard about it that you're convincing yourself of things? This is the waiting game. The agonizing, potentially placebo-driven, terrifying waiting game. You've swallowed the medicine and now you just have to endure the uncertainty until its effects for good or ill become undeniable. A mainstream historical fact about medicine in this period is the significant role of the patient's belief in the cure. With limited understanding of pathology and pharmacology, compared to today, the physician's or apothecary's reputation, the complexity and cost of the remedy, and the patient's faith in the treatment were often as impactful, if not more so, than the active properties of the ingredients. If you truly believed this potent, foul-tasting potion, prepared by a respected practitioner in his mysterious shop, would cure you, that belief could itself contribute to a perceived improvement, either through the power of suggestion or by reducing stress, which can exacerbate physical symptoms. So as you walk battling the urge to gag, you try to channel every ounce of your mental energy into believing this stuff is working. It's working, it's working. You murmur under your breath, hoping sheer willpower can somehow activate the healing properties of, well, whatever was in there. You spot a cat slinking through a narrow alleyway, its fur sleek and its movements stealthy. You wonder if the apothecary used cat parts in any of his remedies? Probably not. But you've heard whispers of much stranger things. Animal parts were common ingredients. Dried organs, animal fat, ground bone, even excrement, believed to hold intrinsic properties linked to the animal itself or to broader sympathetic magic. It's enough to make you slightly wary of pigeons now, just in case you keep walking, navigating the crowds. The sun is perhaps higher now, or maybe it's lower. Time seems to warp when you're this acutely focused on your internal state. You pass a water carrier, his leather skin dripping coolness onto the street. You're incredibly thirsty, the potion having left your mouth feeling dry and coated, but you hesitate. Will water interfere with the remedy? You don't want to wash away any potential magic. You decide against it for now, pushing through the thirst, adding it to the growing list of minor discomforts accompanying the potentially miraculous cure. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of inert or frankly harmful ingredients in historical medicine was purely based on misunderstanding and superstition, or if there was a degree of pragmatic empiricism at play where practitioners simply observed what seemed to work or coincided with recovery and incorporated those elements into their remedies regardless of the actual mechanism. Was a belief in sympathetic magic the primary driver, or were doctors genuinely trying to find effective treatments through trial and error, even if their understanding of cause and effect was fundamentally different from ours? As you feel a strange, bubbling sensation in your stomach, is that the illness retreating or just gas? You can't help but ponder this historical debate on a very personal, very uncomfortable level. Did the apothecary truly believe the lizard tails and ground minerals were fighting your specific ailment? Or was he just following established tradition and hoping for the best? You really hope it was the former, backed by some genuine, albeit mysterious efficacy. A quirky or fringe tidbit from medical history relevant here. is the doctrine of signatures. Popular in Europe during this period, though its influence reached across cultures, this doctrine held that plants and minerals often bore physical resemblances, signatures to the parts of the body they were intended to heal or the diseases they could treat. For example, lungwort with its spotted leaves was used for lung ailments and yellow plants for jaundice. While seemingly naive, this highlights a fascinating way people tried to understand the natural world and its potential therapeutic uses, seeking clues in visible forms rather than chemical properties. You wonder if any of the ingredients in your potion had a signature you might recognize. Did the texture or color somehow signify its purpose? Probably not, given the murky flecked appearance. Unless it was meant to cure, being murky and flecked, you decide not to dwell on that possibility. You walk a little further, the sounds of the city starting to fade back into background noise as your attention remains fixed on your internal landscape. You feel a faint tingling sensation in your extremities, your hands, your feet. Is this the potion reaching the furthest points of your body, driving out the illness? Or are your hands just falling asleep because you've been clenching them slightly with anxiety? It's so hard to tell the difference between genuine effects, psychosomatic reaction, and just normal bodily quirks. This whole experience is turning you into a hypochondriac, analyzing every sniffle and twitch. You're pretty sure you didn't feel this many symptoms before taking the cure. You might stop again, perhaps, near a public fountain, watching the flow of water, the activity around it. You take a deep, shaky breath. The air smells of dust donkeys and perhaps a hint of roasting meat from a nearby stall. It's a complex, vibrant tapestry of scents, but underneath it all, you can still detect that faint, acrid odor of the potion clinging to your nostrils. You feel a bead of sweat trickling down your temple. Is that the fever breaking? Or is it just hot outside, which honestly is probably the most likely explanation? You continue your walk, the rhythm of your steps, a small comfort. You try to think about other things. The architecture, the people, the sheer historical weight of this city that has stood for centuries. But the physical sensations pull you back. The churning in your gut seems to be subsiding, slightly replaced by a dull ache. Progress, or just a different kind of discomfort. You sigh inwardly. This is going to be a long day, waiting to see if you'll feel better, worse, or just weirdly the same, but with a persistent bad taste in your mouth. You pass a group of children playing with a simple wooden top, their laughter bright and carefree. You momentarily forget your internal turmoil, watching their simple joy. It's a pleasant distraction, a brief escape from the self-imposed medical mystery you're currently living. But then a sharp, sudden cramp twinges in your side. You gasp, slightly clutching your side. What was that? Was that the illness fighting back against the medicine? Or was it just, a cramp caused by walking awkwardly while hyper-focused on your insides? Your mind races through the possibilities, cycling between hope and mild panic. This is exhausting. You realize that the real trial isn't just taking the dreadful potion. It's the psychological ordeal of waiting for it to work constantly, monitoring your body for signs, interpreting every ache and gurgle as potentially momentous. It's a form of torture, albeit a self-inflicted one born of desperation or curiosity. You miss the blissful ignorance you had before you entered that apothecary shop, before you knew what ground mummy dust tasted like, or suspected you did. You find a quiet spot to sit for a moment, perhaps on a low stone wall in the shade of a building. You take another deep breath, trying to calm your nerves. The sun is warm on your skin. The sounds of the city are a distant hum here. You close your eyes again, focusing on your breath, trying to distinguish between the noise of the world and the noise of your body. The churning in your gut does seem less intense now. The dull ache is still there, maybe slightly less sharp. The warmth in your chest, it feels different. Less like heartburn, more like a gentle heat. Could this be it? Could the potion actually be working? You open your eyes, a flicker of hope igniting within you. It's too early to be sure, of course. It could just be coincidence or your desperate mind playing tricks on you. But for the first time since you swallowed that awful brew, you feel a genuine, albeit fragile, sense of optimism. The cure-all potion of 17th century Cairo, filled with its strange and unsettling ingredients, might actually be doing what it was intended to do. Or you're just in a brief lull before something truly spectacular happens. Either way, the waiting game continues, but perhaps now with a little less dread and a little more cautious anticipation. You just have to keep paying attention, interpreting the subtle signals your body sends, hoping that the path leads towards recovery rather than towards, say, suddenly growing scales or developing an irresistible urge to chase mice. That fragile flicker of optimism. It's complicated. The dull ache in your gut hasn't completely vanished, but it has shifted. It's less a churning protest now and more a persistent low thrumming, like a tiny confused drummer living somewhere behind your navel. And the warmth in your chest, well, it's still there, but it seems to have expanded. It's not unpleasant exactly, but it feels unnatural. Like you've swallowed a small sleepy ember. You keep pressing a hand against your sternum, half expecting to feel heat radiating outwards. Or maybe hear a faint crackling sound. Nothing. Just the familiar beat of your own heart, maybe slightly elevated, because you're focusing on it so intensely. You start to notice other sensations too. A strange, intermittent itching just beneath the skin on your forearms. It moves around, popping up in different spots for a second before fading. Is that the potion working its way through your system, flushing out impurities? Or is it just the combination of heat dust and mild anxiety making your skin crawl? You find yourself subtly scratching your arms as you walk, trying to be discreet. You definitely didn't have this itch before. This is one of those moments where you deeply regret not asking the apothecary for a full list of potential side effects. Or you know potential intended effects that just feel like side effects. The metallic tang from the potion seems to have lessened, thank goodness, but it's been replaced by something else, something slightly earthy and bitter that sits stubbornly on your tongue. You try running your tongue over your teeth, swishing saliva around anything to dislodge it, but it's like a tiny invisible film. You briefly consider buying some dates from a nearby vendor, hoping the sweetness might overpower the taste. But the idea of eating still feels precarious. Your stomach might have stopped its active churning, but it still feels fragile, like it's holding its breath, waiting for you to make a wrong move. As you continue your walk, slightly distracted by your internal state, you start paying closer attention to the other sights and sounds related to health and healing in the city beyond the confines of the apothecary shop. This wasn't the only place people sought remedies. The streets themselves were full of activity, including various forms of medical practice. You pass by a small makeshift stall set up against a wall draped with colorful cloths. A man sits cross-legged behind a low table piled high with dried herbs roots and small, intricately carved amulets. He's talking to a woman gesturing towards different bundles of leaves. He looks less formal than the apothecary, more like a folk healer, relying on traditional knowledge passed down through generations, perhaps combined with a bit of spiritual appeal. He catches your eye and offers a hopeful smile. You nod politely but keep moving. What kind of remedies does he sell? Likely herbal poultices, teas, maybe charms against the evil eye, or specific ailments believed to be caused by spirits. In this era, the line between medicine, magic, and religion was often blurred. You might have seen small packets containing written prayers or verses from the Quran being sold as protective talismans or cures for fever. It makes you wonder about the blend of science, as understood then, superstition, and genuine plant knowledge that went into your own potion. How much of it was effective plant compounds, how much sympathetic magic, and how much just weird stuff? You suspect a significant portion was the latter. Further on, you see a barber surgeon at work in the open air. He has a small basin on a stand, gleaming metal tools. Terrifyingly sharp knives, forceps maybe a saw, laid out on a cloth. A man is seated on a stool, his arm extended, and the barber surgeon is carefully making an incision, presumably for bloodletting. This was a very common practice. The belief was that many illnesses were caused by an imbalance of the body's humors, and removing excess blood was a way to restore that balance. It looks messy and painful. You quickly avert your gaze, a wave of faintness washing over you. Taking the strange potion suddenly seems like a much more appealing option than having someone drain your blood with a street knife, though considering some of the ingredients, perhaps not that much more appealing. A mainstream historical fact about healthcare in 17th century Cairo and the broader Islamic world is the existence of well-established bimaristans, or hospitals. These weren't just places for the sick. They were often sophisticated institutions offering different wards for various ailments, pharmacies similar to the apothecary, libraries of medical texts, and even spaces for medical education. They were far more advanced than many contemporary European hospitals. However, accessing these institutions wasn't always easy for everyone, and for common ailments or those who preferred traditional or folk remedies, seeking out apothecaries, herbalists, or barber surgeons in the city streets and markets was the norm. The scene you're walking through, a mix of formal shops and informal street practitioners, reflects this layered healthcare landscape. It makes you appreciate the relative privacy and perhaps slightly more controlled environment of the apothecary you visited, even if his remedies were adventurous. You continue observing. You see people wearing amulets, small leather pouches, metal pendants, or inscribed stones, openly displayed. These aren't just fashion statements. They are worn for protection against illness, misfortune, or evil spirits. The belief in the power of talismans and charms was widespread across all levels of society. It's a different approach to healing, preventative and spiritual rather than ingesting something foul-tasting. You idly wonder if you should get an amulet just in case the potion doesn't work, or worse, has unintended magical consequences. Maybe something to ward off spontaneous amphibian growth. You file that thought away under things to do if I start croaking. Your journey takes you closer to the bustling heart of the bazaar. The air grows thick with the mingled scents of spices, perfumes, roasting meat, and unwashed bodies. The noise level rises dramatically. Shouting vendors, bleating animals, the babble of countless conversations in multiple languages. Hidden within the chaos are more stalls selling medical supplies and strange remedies. You see vendors selling animal skins, dried insects, bundles of peculiar-looking roots and jars containing things you can't quite identify, shimmering liquids or dark, lumpy pastes. A quirky or fringe tidbit you might encounter here is the trade in medicinal substances derived from exotic animals or even mummies. While possibly an exaggeration or misinterpretation of historical texts and trade goods, there are accounts and inventories from this period listing items like rhinoceros horn, believed to have detoxifying properties, bezoar, stones, calcifications found in animal stomachs considered powerful antidotes, and yes, ground, mummy or bitumen, sometimes used interchangeably, believed to have healing properties, especially for wounds and bruises. The idea that the remains of the ancient dead could be used for healing is profoundly unsettling, and seeing vendors potentially trading in such things adds a layer of genuine creepiness to the market. You quickly look away from a stall displaying what looks suspiciously like dried, leathery animal parts. Your stomach doing a sudden flip that might be related to the potion or might just be sheer revulsion. You find yourself trying to interpret your physical sensations through the lens of these strange remedies you're seeing. The gentle spreading warmth in your chest, could that be the effect of some ingredient meant to heat the humors, the intermittent itching, maybe something designed to draw out impurities through the skin? The strange, earthy taste, perhaps a mineral or a specific root. Historians still argue whether the high cost and exotic nature of certain ingredients, like ground pearls, precious stones, or rare animal parts, were genuinely believed to enhance their efficacy, or if they served more as status symbols and marketing tools designed to impress wealthy clients and justify high prices. Was your apothecary selling you genuine, albeit bizarre medicine, or was part of the price simply for the theater and perceived rarity of the ingredients? As you subtly scratch your arm again, you can't help but feel you paid a premium for this particular brand of discomfort and uncertainty. You continue to navigate the dense crowds, the sheer volume of people and goods overwhelming your senses. You see merchants selling elaborate hookahs, scribes writing letters for the illiterate water sellers, clanging their cups, beggars pleading for coins. It's a vibrant, chaotic tapestry of life, but your attention is still anchored to the strange sensations within your own body. The churning in your gut seems to have settled further, becoming just a low hum. The itching is less frequent. The warmth in your chest remains constant now, not intense, but definitely present. You take a cautious breath, trying to gauge if your chest feels clearer, if the air goes deeper into your lungs than it did before. It's hard to tell. Maybe you're just trying too hard to find positive signs. You pass by a public bathhouse, steam wafting from its entrance. Bathing was considered important for health and hygiene, and bathhouses were social centers as well. Another form of historical medicine, cleanliness and relaxation. You briefly consider stepping inside, thinking the heat and steam might help, but then you remember the potion. Should you bathe after taking a potent remedy, will it wash away the effects you decide against it, not wanting to interfere with whatever delicate internal process might or might not be occurring? You're committed to this path, now seeing it through. You just have to endure the waiting and the constant self-monitoring. The sheer variety of healing practices you've glimpsed today, from the learned apothecary and the sophisticated hospital, imagined to the street herbalist, the barber surgeon, and the amulet seller, highlights the complex medical landscape of the time. People had choices, or perhaps, depending on their means and beliefs, they accessed different layers of care. And within each layer, the practices could range from the arguably beneficial herbal knowledge basic surgery, to the questionable bloodletting strange animal parts, to the purely spiritual or superstitious amulets incantations. You feel a sudden lightness in your head. Is that the headache lifting that you didn't even realize you had? Or are you just slightly lightheaded from walking in the sun, distracted by thoughts of ground mummies and itchy forearms? You try to pinpoint the feeling to categorize it. It's not unpleasant, just different, like a subtle shift in atmospheric pressure inside your skull. You pause for a moment, leaning against a wall, closing your eyes again. You focus inward. The gut still hums. The chest still glows faintly. The itching is gone for now. The lightness in your head persists. It's not clarity exactly, more like a gentle detachment. Maybe the potion is making you slightly floaty. If this is the effect, it's certainly unique. Not quite a cure for whatever ailed you before, but it's definitely doing something. You just hope that something is ultimately beneficial, or at least not permanently weird. This whole experience is definitely starting to feel less like a medical journey and more like a low-budget fantasy novel. The lightness in your head hasn't gone away. If anything, it feels a little more pronounced now, a persistent, gentle fizzing just behind your eyes. It's not quite a headache, and it's definitely not dizziness, but it's undeniably a new layer of internal sensation, piled on top of the gut's low hum and the chest's steady, strange warmth. You try walking a little faster, hoping the movement will shake it off, or at least distract you, but it just seems to float along with you. It's like your brain is very subtly vibrating at a higher frequency than the rest of you, making everything feel just a fraction of a second out of sync. This subtle distortion is starting to warp your perception of the busy street around you. The vibrant colors of the textiles hanging in the stalls seem almost too bright, practically vibrating with intensity. The cacophony of sounds, the shouts, the music, the animal noises, don't quite blend together as they did before. They stand out as individual sharp edges, making the overall noise feel more chaotic and piercing. You find yourself flinching slightly at sudden loud noises, your nerves feeling a little frayed, a little exposed. And the smell, the smells are intense. The rich aroma of roasting lamb from a street vendor is suddenly overwhelmingly savory, almost sickly. The perfume from a woman passing by is cloying and thick in the air. Even the underlying scent of dust and heat feels amplified, grittier, more pervasive. Your senses are on high alert, processing everything with a strange heightened sensitivity that you definitely didn't possess before taking that potion. It's like turning the world's volume dial up to 11 while simultaneously feeling slightly detached from the sound. You pause again, trying to ground yourself. You look at your hands. They seem normal. You wiggle your fingers. Yep, still attached. But there's a faint tingling sensation in your fingertips now, like they've just woken up from being asleep, only they weren't asleep to begin with. Is this part of the potion's cleansing process? Or is this what happens when your humors are aggressively rebalanced? You honestly have no idea. It's hard to tell if these sensations are signs of healing, signs of something going wrong, or just your body having a minor freak out because you ingested lizard brains and ground pearl dust. Probably all three, honestly. The persistent warmth in your chest is starting to feel less like a sleepy ember and more like a tiny contained bonfire. It's not painful, but it's undeniably present, a hot spot radiating subtly inwards. You keep pressing your hand against your robes, against your skin, confirming that there's no external heat. It's all internal. You imagine your inner organs gathered around this tiny internal fire, maybe roasting tiny marshmallows. Or maybe not. You should probably stop thinking about tiny internal bonfires. It's not helping your already slightly off mental state. This feeling of altered perception brings you face to face with a mainstream historical fact about health and the mind in this period. In 17th century medical thought across many cultures, including the Islamic world, drawing from Greek and Roman traditions, the physical and mental states were intrinsically linked, often explained through the theory of humors. An imbalance in the four humors, blood phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, wasn't just thought to cause physical illness, but also influence temperament, mood, and even sanity. Someone with too much black bile might be melancholic, while an excess of yellow bile could make them choleric. So if your potion is drastically altering your physical humors, it stands to reason in their medical framework that it could also be impacting your mental state and perception. These strange sensations and heightened senses could be interpreted as your humors being actively stirred up or shifted by the potent brew. It makes a certain bizarre kind of sense within that historical context. Your body and mind are one, and whatever is happening inside you is definitely spilling over into how you experience the world. As you continue your walk, navigating the crowds feels different too. People seem louder, their movements more abrupt. You catch snatches of conversation, but the words seem to jumble together, not quite making sense. You feel a strange detachment watching the flow of people, like you're observing a river from the bank, rather than being swept along in its current. It's an unsettling feeling, this subtle separation from the familiar rhythm of the city. Is the potion making you slightly hallucinatory? You peer closely at the face of a passing merchant. Does his nose seem slightly wavier than a nose should be? You blink hard. Okay, maybe not. But the thought lingered. You pass by a storyteller in a small square, surrounded by a captivated audience. His voice booms and dips his hands, weaving tales in the air. Usually you might stop for a moment, drawn in by the narrative. But now his voice sounds distorted, too loud in some parts, too soft in others, and the expressions on the faces of the audience seem exaggerated, almost grotesque. It's as if the potion has introduced a subtle layer of cartoonish distortion to the world. You hurry past the amplified sounds and visuals, too much to process in your current state. The light fizzing in your head intensifies for a moment, accompanied by a brief fleeting image. Was that a shimmering, transparent lizard scuttling across the paving stones? You freeze, staring at the spot. Nothing, just dust and foot traffic. Okay, definitely, maybe slightly hallucinatory. This is concerning. You try to remember everything the apothecary said about the potion. Did he mention potential temporary visual disturbances? No, just restores vital balances. He probably considered floating lizards a sign of excellent balancing. Or maybe they were just a quirky side effect he forgot to mention, like spontaneous nose whistling or the sudden desire to organize everything alphabetically. A quirky or fringe tidbit that touches upon this realm of altered perception in historical remedies involves substances known for their psychoactive properties, sometimes used knowingly or unknowingly. While much medical practice focused on humors, some ingredients in historical pharmacopoeias could potentially induce altered states. For example, certain plants containing atropine or scopolamine, like henbane, belladonna, or mandrake, which sometimes appeared in medicinal or anesthetic preparations, could cause delirium, hallucinations, or distorted perception. Even common substances used in excess or improperly prepared could have unexpected effects. Was there some ingredient in your potion, perhaps one of the more exotic or less understood components, that is acting on your brain in this way? The thought is both terrifying and morbidly fascinating. You ingested a potentially potent, multi-animal, multi-mineral, multi-plant cocktail from a time with limited understanding of pharmacology. What did you expect? A gentle herbal tea, you can almost laugh at your own naivety, but the weird sensations are preventing genuine amusement. You find a less crowded side street, needing a moment of respite from the sensory overload of the main thoroughfare. You lean against a cool stone wall, taking slow, deliberate breaths. You try to focus on the feeling of the rough stone against your back, the texture of your robes, anything to ground you in reality. The low hum in your gut is still there, a constant background noise. The chest warmth is steady. The head fizzing is persistent, making the edges of your vision seem slightly blurry, like you're looking through slightly warped glass. You wonder if these effects are permanent, What if you're stuck seeing the world like this? Slightly distorted sounds too loud, smells too strong, with occasional phantom lizards. What if the potion didn't cure your original ailment, but simply replaced it with a much weirder set of symptoms? You picture yourself trying to explain this to someone else in 17th century Cairo. Yes, the chest congestion is gone, but now everything looks wobbly, and I think I saw a spectral mongoose. They'd probably recommend more lizard brains. Historians still argue whether the reported effects of certain historical remedies were purely physiological, psychosomatic influenced by belief and expectation, or genuinely pharmacological due to the active compounds present. Were people hallucinating because the ingredients contained psychoactive compounds or because they deeply believed the potion was powerful and transformative, their minds conjuring the effects? Or was it a combination of both? In your case, having paid good money and having been assured of its efficacy, you are certainly primed to expect something to happen. But these specific sensations, the fizzing head, the altered senses, the fleeting visual anomalies, these weren't on the Apothecaries' list of promised vital balances. You didn't expect to feel like you were starring in a low-budget, slightly surreal historical drama. You push yourself off the wall, needing to keep moving. Sitting still only makes you focus inward, dissecting every strange flicker and thrum. As you walk, you try to refocus your attention outwards again. But the potion's effects are like a veil between you and the world, thin and shimmering, subtly altering everything you perceive. The heat of the sun on your skin feels more intense. The call to prayer from a distant minaret sounds strangely resonant, the notes seeming to hang in the air longer than they should. You pass by a small shaded courtyard. A group of cats are napping peacefully in a sunbeam. You stop to look at them, hoping their mundane reality will be calming. But even they seem slightly off. Their fur seems impossibly vibrant, their purrs, though you can't hear them from here, feel like a tangible vibration in the air. Are they just cats, or are they spectral felines sent to monitor your progress by the potion? You quickly dismiss the thought. That's just the head fizz talking. Probably. This subtle, pervasive sense of wrongness is perhaps the most unsettling effect yet. It's not dramatic, not painful, but it's constant. It's a feeling that your own body and your own perception are no longer entirely reliable. You are experiencing 17th century Cairo, not through your own familiar senses, but through a lens distorted by lizard brains and whatever else was in that cup. And you have no control over it. You are simply a passenger on this strange internal journey, hoping it eventually leads somewhere less wobbly. The subtle weirdness of the world continues a persistent undercurrent to your reality, but now another more immediate sensation demands your attention. It starts subtly, a prickling across your forehead, then the back of your neck. A single bead of moisture traces a slow path down your temple, and then the floodgates open. Suddenly you are sweating. Not just a gentle sheen, but a profound, deep-seated warmth that seems to be erupting from every pore simultaneously. It's the kind of sweat that makes your light cotton robes cling uncomfortably to your skin, that drips from your chin, that pools in the small of your back. This feels directly connected to the internal warmth you've been experiencing in your chest since the potion. It's as if that tiny internal bonfire decided it wasn't enough to just glow. It needed to start boiling something inside you and venting the steam through your skin. You wipe your brow with the back of your hand, but it's instantly damp again. The air, already warm and dusty, now feels heavy and suffocating around you, amplified by the heat radiating from your own body. You're not just walking through the heat of Cairo, you are a heat source yourself. You feel like a walking, talking human humidifier, except less useful and significantly less pleasant to be around right now. If anyone had a coil of copper tubing and a fan, you'd be ready to cool their house down. But it's not just the volume of sweat, it's the feeling of your skin itself. It feels different. In some areas, it's slick and clammy from the sweat. In others, particularly on your arms and legs, it feels strangely dry and almost papery. As the sweating intensifies, you notice a new sensation, an itch. A low-grade irritating itch that starts in one spot and then seems to jump around, teasing you. You try to scratch through your robes, but it doesn't help much. Looking closely at your skin on your forearm, where the material is pulled back, you see something else happening. The skin looks redder than usual, slightly flushed. And are those tiny bumps, just the slightest pinprick eruptions, barely visible unless you look closely, but definitely they're all scattered across the reddened skin. They don't look like mosquito bites or scratches. They look like something is trying to push its way out. This sudden sweating that changes in skin texture, the redness, the tiny eruptions, it all aligns in the gruesome medical logic of the 17th century with the concept of humors being purged. A mainstream historical fact about medicine in this era, building on ancient Greek and Roman ideas, is the belief that illness was often caused by an imbalance or corruption of the four humors. And one primary way the body expelled these bad humors was through external manifestations: sweating, vomiting, bleeding, or through the skin in the form of rashes, boils, pustules, or ulcers. These skin eruptions weren't seen as the problem itself, but as visible evidence that the body was actively fighting the illness, pushing the corrupted humors out to the surface to be shed or drained away. So according to the prevailing medical wisdom of the time, your sudden transformation into a sweaty, slightly bumpy creature might be seen not as a bad sign, but potentially a good sign. Your body, perhaps stimulated by the potent concoction of lizard brains and ground pearls, is actively trying to rid itself of whatever imbalance or bad stuff was causing your original symptoms. The apothecary, if he saw you now, might nod sagely and say, "Ah, the humors are moving. Excellent." You, however, feel less excellent and more like you've rolled around in something vaguely adhesive and then been left in the sun. The itchiness spreads, becoming more insistent. It's not unbearable, but it's constant, a reminder that your largest organ is currently undergoing some kind of bizarre transformation process. You fantasize for a moment about finding a cool, clean pool of water to just sink into to wash away the sweat and soothe the irritated skin. But such luxuries aren't readily available on a bustling street in 17th century Cairo. You're stuck stewing in your own personal microclimate. As the heat continues to pour off, you notice how it interacts with the altered perception from the previous section. The intense smells of the market seem to thicken in the humid air around you. The sounds feel muffled by the rushing in your ears, which might just be the sound of your own internal furnace working overtime. The slight visual distortions make the people passing by seem to waver and shimmer in your heat haze like mirages in a desert. It's a multi-sensory assault: heat, dampness, itchiness, weird visuals, muffled sounds. All courtesy of one small cup of questionable liquid. You're getting the full, immersive, historical medical experience whether you wanted it or not, which frankly you did not. You try fanning yourself with your hand, a futile gesture against the relentless heat. You see a water seller nearby, his goatskin bag looking cool and damp. The thought of a drink, any drink, is incredibly appealing, but you hesitate. What if adding more liquid to your system somehow interferes with this purging process? Or what if the water makes you even more sweaty? It seems safer in this moment of profound bodily weirdness to just endure. Your ancestors, after all, endured far worse, often with less explanation, and certainly less access to modern antiperspirant. The itchiness gets worse on your back. You can't see what's happening there, but you can feel the small bumps multiplying, becoming more raised. You imagine your back is starting to resemble a cobblestone street, each bump a tiny irritating stone. Maybe you could hire tiny camels to traverse it? No, definitely not. You need to stop having these weird thoughts. They're probably just another symptom of the moving humors affecting your mental clarity. A quirky or fringe tidbit related to skin eruptions and purging in this period involves the use of specific, sometimes bizarre, topical applications intended to draw out humors. Beyond standard poultices of herbs and grains, historical texts occasionally mention ingredients that make you wince. Pigeon dung, for instance, was sometimes used in poultices for its supposed ability to draw out poisons or corrupt humors from abscesses or ulcers. Animal fats, ground insects, or surprising mineral compounds might be mixed into plasters applied directly to the skin to encourage eruptions or drainage. The idea was to coax the bad humors to the surface and help them leave the body through these prepared pathways. So if your tiny bumps decided to become full-blown boils, a doctor might recommend plastering them with something that sounds deeply unappealing today, all in the name of helping the purge. You briefly wonder if rubbing pigeon dung on your back would help the itching. You immediately discard the thought. Some historical authenticity is great for educational purposes, but you have your limits. You're pretty sure modern medicine has better, less avian excrement-based solutions for itchy bumps. Historians still argue whether the success of these purging methods and topical treatments was due to any genuine therapeutic effect of the ingredients, the body's natural healing processes being misinterpreted, or the powerful psychosomatic effect of belief, both from the patient and the practitioner, in the system of humoral medicine. Did a poultice of herbs and animal waste actually draw out disease, or did it simply irritate the skin, causing inflammation and perhaps bursting a boil, while the patient recovered anyway, attributing their recovery to the treatment? It's a complex knot of historical interpretation where medical theory, empirical observation, or misinterpretation and patient expectation were all intertwined. Right now, you're a living, sweating, itching example of this debate. Are these symptoms genuine signs of healing? Are they just unpleasant side effects? Is your belief in the potion's power somehow manifesting these symptoms? Or are you simply having a mild allergic reaction to ground lizard or ancient pearls? You don't have the luxury of a modern lab analysis or a randomized control trial. You only have your increasingly uncomfortable body and the strange, distorted world around you. You reach a small, quiet square with a dry fountain. There's a bit of shade from a large tree. You gratefully sink down onto the edge of the fountain, leaning against the cool stone. The slight relief from the direct sun is immense. You peel your robes away from your damp skin, letting the air circulate. The itching is still there, a low, persistent buzz beneath the surface of your skin. The bumps are still there, two tiny raised points that feel more pronounced now that you're focusing on them. You take a deep, shaky breath, trying to regain some composure. The sweating is slowing a little now that you're out of the sun, but you still feel damp and overheated. Your head is still fizzing slightly, though perhaps less intensely than before, or maybe you're just distracted by the skin situation. The chest warmth is still a steady ember, but it feels less like a bonfire and more like a warm compress. Now, maybe it's hard to keep track of all the sensations. You close your eyes for a moment, trying to just be without analyzing every single twitch and thrum. But the feeling of your skin won't let you. It feels alien, slightly tight in some places, strangely loose in others. It's the casing for your body, but it doesn't feel entirely like your casing anymore. It feels like it's actively doing something independent of your will, guided by some internal process you don't understand. It's a humbling and slightly terrifying reminder that even in the 21st century, our understanding of the body is constantly evolving. And in the 17th century, it was a landscape of educated guesses, ancient theories, and potent, unpredictable brews. You stay there for a few minutes, letting the shade offer its small mercy. The quiet of the square is a relief after the main street, allowing your overstimulated senses a brief respite. The birds chirping in the tree overhead sound less like distorted squawks and more like well-birds. Maybe the effects are starting to fade, or maybe this is just a momentary lull before the next wave of strangeness hits. Given your luck so far, you're bracing for the latter. You are a walking, sweating, itching case study in 17th century experimental medicine, and the experiment, it seems, is far from over. You push yourself up from the fountain edge, your skin protesting slightly as your robes cling again. Time to keep moving. You push yourself up from the fountain edge, the cool stone a fading memory against your suddenly clammy skin. Your robes cling, a damp, uncomfortable second skin that accentuates every bump and itch. You tell yourself it's just the heat, just the reaction, just the humors moving, but a new sensation is bubbling up, demanding your immediate attention. It starts as a vague unease in your gut, a sort of churning uncertainty that has nothing to do with the strange sights or sounds around you, and everything to do with the unsettling things happening inside. This feeling intensifies rapidly. It's not pain, not exactly, at least not yet. It's a deep, insistent discomfort. Like your stomach is staging a protest rally, complete with tiny, disgruntled organs holding miniature picket signs. Nausea is the first clear symptom to emerge, a wave washing over you that makes your head swim just a little more than the previous distortions. It's that familiar, sickening sensation that warns you things are about to get much, much worse. And then come the cramps. A sudden sharp clenching deep in your abdomen, like a fist squeezing your insides. You gasp quietly, doubling over, slightly trying to breathe through it. It passes leaving a dull ache, but you know it will be back. The combination of nausea and cramping sends a clear, urgent message through your system: something needs to get out. This internal turmoil, like the sweating and the skin eruptions, fits perfectly into the 17th century understanding of humoral medicine. While outward manifestations like rashes or boils were ways the body expelled corrupted humors through the skin, internal purges were just as crucial. Vomiting or diarrhea were often seen as the body's natural or physician-assisted ways of ridding itself of excess or vitiated phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, or blood that were causing illness. Induced vomiting, emesis, or bowel evacuation, purgation were cornerstone treatments. So in the logic of the time, this sudden violent internal distress might be interpreted as your body powerfully expelling the bad stuff. Perhaps the very essence of the illness the potion was meant to cure, or perhaps the less than salutary components of the cure itself. You stand there in the quiet square, clutching your stomach, the urgent need building with terrifying speed. The brief respite you found under the tree is over. Now a new kind of panic is setting in. You need to find a privy, and you need to find one on Onum. What now? Scanning your surroundings with eyes that are starting to water slightly from the nausea, you realize the difficulty of your predicament. This isn't a modern city with easily accessible public restrooms. Even in a major hub like 17th century Cairo, sanitation was a complicated and often localized affair. A mainstream historical fact about sanitation in this period is that while wealthier homes might have rudimentary latrines emptying into cesspits or sometimes directly into the Nile, less than ideal for downstream users. Obviously, public facilities as we understand them were rare or non-existent. People relied on private arrangements, communal pits in certain areas, or simply found discreet or not so discreet spots wherever they could. The bustling streets and markets you just came from offered little in the way of privacy or convenience for this kind of emergency. The cramps returned sharper this time, forcing a low groan from your lips. Okay, privacy is secondary now. Proximity is everything. You look around desperately. The square is quiet, but certainly not empty enough for this. There are a few small buildings, some with closed doors, others seemingly residential. You can't just barge into someone's home and ask for their latrine, especially not in your current state dripping sweat and likely looking quite unwell and possibly emitting unpleasant bodily noises. You spot a narrow alleyway leading off the square between two buildings. It's dark and looks uninviting, probably serving as a dumping ground for refuse, but it offers potential concealment. It's not ideal, not by a long shot, but it's closer to being an option than the open square. You shuffle towards it, your pace quickening, despite the weakness the nausea is inducing. As you hurry down the alley, the smell hits you. It's overwhelmingly pungent, a potent cocktail of decaying organic matter, stale urine, and things you probably don't want to identify. It's the smell of urban waste management 17th century style, and it does absolutely nothing to help your nausea. In fact, it might be making it worse. You clamp a hand over your mouth, breathing shallowly through your nose, though that doesn't block much of the olfactory assault. You press on, desperate for even a small, relatively clean corner. The alley twists and turns, revealing more piles of garbage scavenging animals and walls stained with various substances. This is the grim reality behind the vibrant market facade. This is where the less pleasant aspects of daily life were managed, or rather often left to accumulate. The urgency is now paramount. Your body is giving you unmistakable signals. This isn't just discomfort anymore. It's a biological imperative. You feel yourself starting to tremble, whether from the physical effort, the nausea, or sheer panic, you're not sure. You scan frantically, hoping against hope for some sort of purpose-built facility, a stable that might have a pit, anything structured that isn't just the ground in a public thoroughfare. A quirky or fringe tidbit related to historical remedies for stomach issues and internal purges is the sheer variety and often horrifying nature of the ingredients used. While some remedies involved relatively benign herbs, others leaned into the bizarre and potent. Preparations containing antimony mercury or even crushed insects were used as emetics to induce vomiting or strong laxatives. One rather alarming practice involved using things like oil of scorpions or preparations including parts of spiders, not necessarily for purging, but for stomach ailments, highlighting the trust placed in ingredients that seem utterly toxic or magical to modern eyes. The line between a remedy meant to settle the stomach, one meant to forcibly evacuate it, and one that was simply poisonous, could be very thin, relying heavily on the practitioner's knowledge or lack thereof, and the patient's resilience. Your current internal state feels dangerously close to that thin line. You stumble deeper into the alley, the smell growing more intense. You find a small alcove formed by a projecting wall. It's still not ideal, far from it, but it offers a shred more privacy than being in the open. You lean against the rough stone wall, sweat still beating on your forehead, despite the cold dread pooling in your stomach. The cramp seize you again harder this time, and you know you can't wait any longer. Historians still argue whether the frequent use of harsh emetics and purges in historical medicine did more harm than good in many cases. While they might occasionally have expelled something genuinely harmful ingested by the patient, the violent nature of these treatments could also severely dehydrate and weaken an already sick person, potentially hindering their recovery. Was the perceived success due to expelling the illness, or was it simply a dramatic event that the patient and practitioner interpreted as successful purging of bad humors? Or were patients sometimes recovering despite the treatment, not because of it? Your current experience certainly doesn't feel like a gentle path to wellness. It feels like your body is being violently hijacked and forced to undergo a distressingly public and unpleasant ordeal. You brace yourself against the wall, trying to focus on anything other than the overwhelming physical sensations and the truly awful smell. You close your eyes for a second, wishing you could just rewind time, skip the apothecary, skip the potion, skip this alleyway of despair. But there's no going back. You are fully immersed in the consequences, both physical and sensory, of your historical medical experiment. This isn't a textbook description. This is the visceral, undignified reality. And it's about as far from a relaxing bedtime story as you can get right now. Though perhaps the sheer unpleasantness is so overwhelming, it might distract you from other thoughts. That's one way to clear your head, apparently. The sounds of the bustling market feel distant now, muffled by the thick air of the alley and the rushing in your ears. The visual distortions seem less significant compared to the urgent, undeniable reality of your body's rebellion. This is raw, fundamental biology taking over, overriding all the strange perceptions and abstract discomforts that came before. You lean further into the alcove, trying to make yourself as inconspicuous as possible. This is not how you imagined your journey into 17th century medicine unfolding. You pictured intellectual curiosity, fascinating facts, perhaps a mild case of historical indigestion from thinking about ground pearls. You did not picture this level of urgent physical humiliation. This is definitely a detail they leave out of the glossy history books. The sheer indignity of needing a toilet. Right now, in a place with effectively none, while your body is actively trying to expel its contents, is a powerful reminder of how much daily life has changed. You take another shaky breath, trying to prepare yourself. The feeling is undeniable now. You are about to join the long, unglamorous history of humans desperately seeking a private spot to answer nature's call, complicated by a potent, historically accurate, and utterly ill-advised cure-all. This is the purging of humors in its messy, undeniable, and deeply inconvenient reality. The world narrows to a single urgent point of focus within your own body. The sounds of the alley, the oppressive smells, the strange flickering light, they all fade as an intense wave builds and crests inside you. The cramping, which had been sharp and intermittent, now seizes your abdomen with a relentless, crushing force. You double over completely, hands pressing uselessly against your stomach, a low involuntary moan escaping your lips. This is beyond nausea now. This is the body's ultimate violent rejection. There's no time for dignity, no time for finding a cleaner spot, not even time to brace yourself fully. Everything feels like it is contracting, pushing, demanding release. A sudden convulsive heave racks your body, forcing you forward, emptying your stomach in a torrent of bitter, fiery liquid and whatever meager contents were left. It splatters onto the grimy alley floor with a wet, awful sound that echoes in the sudden silence after the expulsion. You gag your throat-burning eyes, streaming not just from the physical strain, but from the sheer, overwhelming sensory assault of your own body's output, mingling with the already foul air of the alley. But the purging doesn't necessarily stop there. Depending on the ingredients in that potent potion, the lower regions of your digestive tract might be just as eager to expel their contents. The cramping shifts moving lower, becoming a different kind of urgent pressure. You sink to your haunches, leaning weakly against the wall, every muscle protesting. Another wave hits different from the first, equally demanding and utterly lacking in grace or control. This is the full, unfiltered experience of a historical purge. A complete systemic clean-out, intended or not. It is violent, messy, and profoundly unpleasant. After what feels like an eternity, but is probably only a few agonizing minutes, the worst subsides. Your body, having seemingly expelled everything it could, is left shaky and weak. You remain huddled against the wall, gasping for breath, sweat pouring off you in rivers that have nothing to do with the heat of the day and everything to do with the sheer physical effort and systemic shock you've just endured. The intense cramping fades, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache in your abdomen and a profound sense of emptiness that feels both physically debilitating and oddly clinical. Like a pipe that's just been thoroughly flushed, you feel hollowed out. This immediate aftermath is one of utter exhaustion. Every muscle feels like jelly. Your limbs are heavy and your head is light and spinning. You're still leaning heavily against the wall, eyes closed, just trying to ride out the residual waves of nausea and dizziness. The stench of the alley, now compounded by your own contribution, is gag-inducing, but you don't have the strength to move away from your precarious spot. You simply exist in the moment, focused entirely on the basic acts of breathing and trying not to collapse. In the logic of 17th century medicine, this violent expulsion would likely be seen as a success. A mainstream historical fact is that purging the body of excess or corrupted humors through vomiting emesis and bowel evacuation purgation was considered a fundamental principle of restoring health. If you were suffering from, say, melancholia, believed to be caused by excess black bile, a strong purgative might be prescribed to literally rid the body of that humor. If you had a fever, perhaps it was too much blood or yellow bile, and bloodletting or an emetic would be used. The rationale was that the illness was the bad humor, and getting it out was the cure. So from that perspective, your current miserable state could be interpreted as your body effectively fighting off whatever ill humor the potion was targeting. You are, in their eyes, actively getting better. A quirky or fringe tidbit about post-purging practices is that sometimes after such a violent treatment, patients would be given very specific bland and often thin gruels or broths. This wasn't just about easing them back onto solid food. It was sometimes linked to beliefs about not stirring up the humors again too quickly or needing to replenish specific qualities that were lost during the purge. It's a detail that highlights the complex and often ritualized nature of recovery within the humoral framework, extending even to the first sips of broth after throwing up your insides. You certainly don't feel ready for any broth, let alone one steeped in complex humoral theory. You'd settle for a long drink of clean water if such a thing were readily available here. You open your eyes slowly, the alley walls seeming to waver slightly. The dizziness is still there, but it's lessening, replaced by a profound fatigue that seeps into your bones. You push yourself away from the wall, your knees shaky, your clothes damp and clinging unpleasantly. The air feels clearer now, not because the alley smells better, it definitely does not, but because the internal pressure has been released. There's a fragile sense of relief mixed with the lingering ache and the pervasive disgust at your surroundings and your own body's recent performance. Historians still argue whether the physical relief sometimes experienced after intense purging was a genuine sign of the body fighting off an illness, or simply the temporary calm that follows extreme physical exertion and emptying. Was the patient actually healthier or just too weak and dehydrated to feel the symptoms of their original illness as acutely? Did the psychological effect of such a dramatic treatment play a role convincing the patient they must be getting better because something so significant happened? Your own immediate feeling is too complicated to offer a clear answer. You feel awful, yes, but also empty. Lighter, perhaps, though that might just be the loss of fluids and stomach contents. You take a tentative step away from the alcove, wincing at a residual cramp. The world feels a little sharper, a little less distorted than it did just before everything erupted. But that might be the effect of your body simply having completed a major, albeit forced physiological process. It certainly wasn't a cure that brought gentle, soothing relief. It was a violent, humiliating, and utterly exhausting ordeal. If this was the path to wellness, you find yourself seriously questioning the destination. Or maybe the definition of wellness was just different back then. Perhaps not actively expelling your internal organs was considered a state of peak health. You shuffle further down the alley, seeking to put a little distance between yourself and the scene of your recent distress. The walls are still grimy, the smell's still potent, but your immediate desperate need has passed. You're left with the physical aftermath, the weakness, the lingering taste of bile, the clammy skin, and the overall feeling of having been put through a wringer. This wasn't the intellectual exploration of historical remedies you imagined. This was a deeply physical, undeniably real encounter with a fundamental and frankly barbaric by modern standards medical practice. It's hard to reconcile the theoretical understanding of humoral medicine with the visceral reality you just experienced. The idea of balancing humors sounds almost philosophical until you are actively, violently expelling them onto a dirty alley floor. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just dates and theories, it's also the messy, uncomfortable, and often profoundly undignified experiences of daily life, including healthcare. And in 17th century Cairo, sometimes healthcare involves squatting in an alley, throwing up your guts. Definitely puts the sick back in history, doesn't it? You emerge cautiously from the alley's mouth, blinking in the slightly dimmer light of the late afternoon. The sounds of the market, though muffled in the alley, now rush back and seeming louder, more chaotic than before. You feel exposed, vulnerable, and utterly spent. Was it worth it? Did that vile potion and the subsequent ordeal actually do anything to fix your supposed humor imbalance? Or did it just make you violently ill and leave you stranded in a stinky alley feeling like a wrung-out sponge? The question hangs in the air, mingling with the lingering smell of, well, everything. You need to get out of here, find somewhere less pungent, and try to make sense of what just happened. The cure feels suspiciously like a new illness. You push out of the alley's damp embrace, blinking hard against the relative brightness of the street. The noise, the smells, the sheer busyness of Cairo wash over you in a wave, and for a second you feel completely overwhelmed. You are shaky weak and acutely aware of how you must look and smell. The carefully curated image of the modern history enthusiast exploring the past has dissolved into a sweaty pallid and slightly bile-tinged mess, standing uncertainly on a grimy street corner. Your legs feel like they're made of overcooked pasta, and the world seems to tilt gently around the edges. The immediate overwhelming need is simply to stop, to find somewhere, anywhere, that isn't a public street, or worse, another foul-smelling alley. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache, a deep bone-weary exhaustion settling in after the violent expulsion. Every breath feels shallow, every movement requires conscious effort. It's not just physical weakness. There's a profound sense of depletion, like your body has just run a marathon it didn't sign up for wearing flip-flops. You take a tentative step, then another trying to blend back into the flow of people, though you suspect you stick out like a sore thumb coated in mystery grime. The sounds of bartering, the calls of vendors, the clatter of hooves and carts all register, but they feel distant, muffled by the ringing in your ears and the fog in your brain. You clutch your stomach instinctively, a dull ache residing where the violent cramps had just moments before raged. The metallic bitter taste still lingers in your mouth, a constant unpleasant reminder of the recent ordeal. Finding a place to recover in 17th century Cairo, especially in your current state, is no simple matter. There are no clean, quiet cafes, no public restrooms with running water. There might be caravanserai offering lodging, but you're not looking for a place to sleep just yet. And you certainly don't feel up to negotiating for a room while potentially radiating the scent of desperation and puke. Your gaze sweeps over the busy street, looking for, what, a low wall to lean against? A doorway offering a moment's respite from the crowds. The feeling of exposure is intense. In a time and place where illness was often visible, public, and intertwined with social standing and religious beliefs, appearing weak and unwell in the street could draw unwanted attention, pity, or even suspicion. You try to pull yourself together, straightening your shoulders slightly, attempting a posture that says, just a weary traveler, not recently projectile vomited in a back alley. It's a performance you're entirely too exhausted to maintain. The lingering effects of the purge are undeniable. Your head is still spinning intermittently, and a new kind of nausea, weaker but persistent, keeps rising in your throat. This isn't the urgent explosive nausea from before. It's a sickening rolling sensation, a protest from a digestive system that feels thoroughly violated. You need water desperately to rinse the taste from your mouth and try to rehydrate your depleted body. But where do you get clean water in this bustling pre-modern city? The public fountains, the water sellers with their goatskin bags. You eye them with deep suspicion, imagining all the fascinating microbes they might contain. After what you've just put your system through, you are extremely reluctant to introduce anything new and questionable. A mainstream historical fact about 17th century medical practice is that a purgative like the one you likely just ingested was rarely considered a complete cure in itself. It was often just the first most dramatic step. Following a strong purge, a patient would typically be prescribed a period of rest, a specific diet, to help the body recover without aggravating the humors further, and sometimes follow-up remedies. These might include gentler tonics, soothing poultices, or specific herbal preparations intended to rebuild strength or address symptoms that the purge didn't fully alleviate. Think of it like changing the oil in your car with a sledgehammer. You cleared out the old stuff violently, but now you need to gently refill and ensure nothing was broken in the process. So theoretically, according to the medical wisdom of the time, your current state of utter exhaustion and lingering discomfort isn't a failure of the treatment, but rather the expected phase of recovery. You've successfully expelled the offending humor, or at least a significant amount of your stomach contents, and now the body needs to stabilize and regain its balance. This understanding doesn't make you feel any less miserable, but it provides a historical context for why someone might prescribe such a violent method and consider the aftermath part of the healing process. A quirky or fringe tidbit related to post-purge recovery is the emphasis sometimes placed on the patient's mental state during this period. Some physicians and healers believe that negative emotions, stress, or even exciting thoughts could interfere with the body's delicate process of reestablishing humoral balance after such a disruption. Patients might be advised to avoid arguments, listen to soothing music, whatever passed for that in 17th century Cairo, or even look at pleasant objects. The idea was to create an environment conducive to healing where both body and mind could recover. So while you might feel like screaming into a pillow, the historical prescription would likely be to find some quiet corner and think happy thoughts perhaps about rainbows made of balanced humors, which frankly sounds about as appealing as another dose of that potion right now. You manage to shuffle down the street, hugging the walls, trying to find a slightly less chaotic spot. The sheer physical effort of walking is surprising. Your muscles are protesting, and that deep fatigue feels like it's radiating from your very core. You spot a small, recessed doorway, slightly shadowed and less frequented than the main thoroughfare. It's not ideal, still dusty, probably home to various insects and rodents, but it offers a moment of privacy and a chance to lean against something solid without being jostled by passers-by. Sinking onto the dusty threshold, you let your head loll back against the stone. Closing your eyes briefly, you focus on your breathing, trying to slow the shallow, rapid pants that have become your default. The world behind your eyelids is still a little swimmy. The lingering taste is the worst, making your mouth feel perpetually coated and dry. You desperately crave moisture, clean and cool. Maybe there's a water carrier who looks marginally less. Questionable historians still argue whether the observed recovery after a purge was primarily due to the elimination of toxins or pathogens, if the original illness was bacterial or viral, or simply the result of the body having completed a significant physiological event and the patient experiencing temporary relief from the pressure of the illness. Similar to how popping a blister brings immediate relief even if the underlying infection remains. Did the body expel the illness or just expel itself? It's hard to know for sure, especially when symptoms were described in the vague language of humoral theory rather than modern diagnostics. Your own experience doesn't provide a clear answer. You feel less full and less nauseous in the explosive sense, but also just profoundly unwell in a new depleted way. You open your eyes again, the immediate crisis passed, but the aftermath is a new kind of challenge. This state of weakness and discomfort is the recovery process according to historical thought. It requires patience, careful management, and often further treatment. It's a stark contrast to the modern expectation of popping a pill and feeling better within hours, or at least not feeling actively worse. This historical cure feels less like fixing something gently and more like hitting the reset button with a sledgehammer and hoping the system reboots correctly. You shift uncomfortably on the hard stone, trying to find a less awkward position. Every little movement feels like an effort. You imagine trying to explain this to a modern doctor. Yes, I was feeling a bit off, so I drank some questionable potion involving animal parts and herbs, and then I threw up violently in an alley for 10 minutes. Now I feel like I've been run over by a camel. Is this normal? They'd probably look at you like you had 3 heads, all of them unbalanced in their humors. The thought of seeking out the apothecary again, or another healer for the next step in your treatment, feels exhausting. What would they recommend now? A soothing balm made of lizard fat, a strengthening broth brewed with pigeon feet. The possibilities given the previous dose seem endless and equally unappetizing. You've successfully completed step 1, violent purge. Now comes step 2, try not to die of the purge aftermath. It's a brutal curriculum. The sensory details of the street are slowly becoming less overwhelming and more defined as the fog in your head starts to lift, albeit slowly. You can hear specific conversations, the rhythmic striking of a blacksmith in the distance, the distant call to prayer. The smells, while still potent, are less directly assaultive now that your own contribution isn't quite so fresh. You notice the intricate carvings on a nearby building, the vibrant colors of textiles spilling from a merchant's stall. The world is coming back into focus, even if your body feels like it's lagging several steps behind. You push yourself up, leaning against the doorway for support. Staying here isn't helping. You need to keep moving, find some semblance of a place where you can rest properly, perhaps even attempt to clean yourself up a little. The idea of food is still entirely unappealing, but water is a desperate necessity. Maybe one of those water carriers, if chosen carefully, won't contain any particularly adventurous amoebas. It's a risk you might have to take. The alternative, remaining this dehydrated, feels worse. As you step back onto the street, blending cautiously into the passing stream of people, you carry the visceral memory of the alley with you. It's a powerful, uncomfortable reminder that historical medicine, even when based on sophisticated theoretical frameworks like humoral theory, often involved practices that were incredibly harsh by modern standards. Recovery wasn't always a gentle slope. Sometimes it was a brutal fight simply to survive the cure itself. And you've just gotten through round 1. Now you need to figure out what comes next in a body that feels profoundly betrayed by its recent encounter with historical healing. You shuffle along the busy street, a ghost in a vibrant, solid world. The sheer volume of everything feels amplified in your weakened state. The chatter of voices, the rhythmic clang of metal from a nearby coppersmith, the pungent, complex aroma that is uniquely Cairo, a mix of spices, dust, animal musk, and something indefinably organic now, thankfully, without your recent unfortunate contribution adding to the symphony. Your body is screaming for stillness, for quiet, for a place where you can just be without the relentless pressure of movement and sensation. The idea of continuing on to find some sort of permanent lodging, a caravanserai, perhaps feels overwhelming. The energy required to negotiate a price, interact with strangers, climb stairs, potentially deal with noise and crowded conditions. It's too much. You need something simpler, more immediate. Just a moment's peace, a quiet corner, a wall that doesn't belong to someone who will shout at you for leaning on it. Your eyes scan the streetscape with a new kind of desperation. Every doorway looks potentially inhabited. Every alcove seems too public or too suspiciously dark. You pass by stalls piled high with colorful goods, vendors calling out their wares, with tireless energy donkeys laden with burdens shuffling past. It's a magnificent, chaotic scene, but right now it feels like an obstacle course designed specifically to highlight your fragility. You feel a profound sense of vulnerability being out in the open, like this looking and feeling so distinctly not well. In this era, where medical understanding was tied to visible symptoms and social status appearing weak, could invite unwanted attention from solicitous offers of help, perhaps involving more terrifying remedies to potentially being seen as a burden, or even in some superstitions attracting negative spiritual attention. No thank you, you've had enough attention from the universe for one day. The dehydration is starting to press in. Your mouth is dry and still has that awful metallic, bitter aftertaste. Your throat feels scratchy. Every cell in your body seems to be crying out for moisture. Water. Glorious, clean, life-giving water. But obtaining it safely in 17th century Cairo is a significant challenge. You eye the water sellers, men carrying large goatskin bags slung over their shoulders, dispensing scoops of water into metal cups for a small coin. They seem ubiquitous, the city's mobile hydration stations. But the skins, you can't help but imagine the fascinating microbial ecosystems thriving within those animal bladders. And the cups, how often are they truly cleaned? Then there are the public fountains, the sables. These structures, often elaborate and attached to mosques or other charitable buildings, were constructed specifically to provide free drinking water to the public. They were acts of piety funded by wealthy individuals or religious endowments, waqfs ensuring that even the poorest could access this necessity. You spot one in the distance, a beautiful stone structure with ornate carvings and a metal grill protecting the spouts. It looks majestic, a symbol of civic generosity. But your modern brain immediately goes to the practicalities. Is the water source clean? Is the basin regularly cleaned? Are the spouts used by everyone? It's a public water source in a pre-sanitation era. The risk feels significant. However, the alternative is remaining desperately dehydrated, which feels like a far more immediate threat than potential future microbes. You weigh your options, staggering slightly. The thought of another violent purge initiated by bad water is almost enough to make you curl up and accept your fate. But the physical craving for liquid is becoming unbearable. It's like your tongue is a piece of sandpaper and your throat is lined with dust. You need water, now. You decide to risk the public fountain. It feels marginally safer than the goatskin bag, maybe because the water is flowing seemingly fresher. Or perhaps it's just a psychological preference for stone over animal hide. You make your way towards it, your legs protesting with every step. The closer you get, the more details emerge. The gentle sound of water flowing into the basin, the smooth, cool stone, the people clustered around it, filling jugs or taking quick sips. You join the edge of the small crowd waiting your turn. The atmosphere here is different, quieter, more focused on the simple task of getting water. When a spout becomes free, you step forward hesitantly. You cup your hands under the flow, letting the cool water run over your skin for a moment before bringing your makeshift cup to your lips. It's not chilled like modern water, but it feels incredibly refreshing. You take a small, cautious sip, then another. It tastes just like water. No immediate red flags, no suspicious flavors. You allow yourself a few more careful sips, enough to coat your mouth and throat to take the edge off the desperate dryness. You resist the urge to gulp greedily, mindful that introducing too much too quickly, especially of potentially questionable origin, might upset your recently volatile system. Even this small act of rehydration provides a tiny measure of relief. You feel slightly less like a dried-up leaf, but the need for rest remains paramount. You look around from the vantage point of the fountain square. Across the way, you spot a recessed entrance, perhaps, leading to a small courtyard or the side of a larger building. It seems less trafficked than the main street, slightly set back, offering a potential spot to simply sit down for a few minutes without being directly in the flow of foot traffic. Dragging yourself away from the life-giving water source, you make your way towards this recessed area. It turns out to be the entrance to what looks like a modest khan or caravanserai, a building designed to house merchants and travelers, their animals and their goods. While you're not looking for a room, the entrance area often has space around the sides sheltered from the street. You find a relatively clean patch of ground near a stone bench just inside the main archway. It's still open to the air, but it's quiet, shaded, and offers a sense of being partially withdrawn from the chaotic energy of the city. Sinking down onto the stone bench, you lean your back against the cool wall. A sigh of relief escapes your lips, a shaky, weak sound. Just sitting feels like a profound luxury. You close your eyes again, focusing on the simple act of breathing, trying to find a slow, steady rhythm. The sounds of the city are still present. The distant calls, the rhythmic pounding of the blacksmith, the occasional braying of a donkey. But here they are softer, less intrusive. You can feel the solid, cool stone beneath you, a grounding sensation after the recent turmoil. A mainstream historical fact about rest and recovery in this period is that rest was considered just as vital a component of healing as any medicine or procedure. Physicians following humoral theory believed that illness disrupted the body's natural balance and expended vital energy. Rest allowed the body to conserve energy, stabilize the humors, and facilitate the natural process of restoring equilibrium. It wasn't just about physical rest. Avoiding stress, emotional upheaval, and excessive intellectual activity was also often recommended. Think of it as a system reboot requiring minimal background processes running. Trying to power through illness or the aftermath of a strong treatment was generally discouraged. So simply sitting here trying to be still and quiet, you're in a way following the best medical advice of the time. Your body's insistent demand for rest is perfectly aligned with historical therapeutic principles. It's a small comfort knowing that your current state of utter exhaustion isn't just you being weak, but rather a natural expected part of the recovery process as understood 400 years ago. You're not lazy, you're medically resting, which you should probably embroider on a pillow if you ever make it back to your own time. A quirky or fringe tidbit related to historical ideas of rest is the importance some cultures placed on sleep as a healing force, particularly restorative sleep. There were even specific recommendations for how one should sleep when ill, including preferred body positions often on the right side to aid digestion, though this varied the ideal temperature of the room and avoiding disturbing dreams through calming thoughts before bed. Some remedies were specifically aimed at promoting restful sleep during recovery, sometimes involving mild sedatives derived from herbs like poppy or soothing scents. So while you're just trying to sit up straight, the ideal historical recovery might involve finding a quiet room, lying on your right side, and trying to dream of peaceful things, perhaps plump, well-balanced humors skipping through a meadow. You let your head loll back against the stone again, the cool surface, a welcome contrast to your clammy skin. The immediate urgency has passed. You found water, you found a relatively quiet place to sit. But the deeper exhaustion, the depleted feeling remains. It's not just about physical tiredness, it's a profound sense of being drained, like someone pulled the plug on your internal battery. Historians still argue whether the emphasis on rest in pre-modern medicine was primarily based on empirical observation. Sick people who rested seemed to recover better, or a logical extension of humoral theory. Illness depletes vital spirits. Rest conserves them. Was it proto-scientific observation of the body's natural healing processes, or a theoretical construct based on the balance of humors? Probably a bit of both, like most things in history. What is clear is that rest along with diet and purging formed the cornerstone of most historical medical regimens. You shift slightly on the bench, trying to ease a cramp in your leg. Even in this moment of relative peace, your body is still protesting. The recovery isn't passive. It's an active process of your system trying to reestablish its baseline after being fundamentally disrupted. And in this historical context, that reestablishment often wasn't considered complete with just rest and water. It usually required further intervention. The apothecary's face drifts into your mind. The knowing look, the slightly unsettling array of ingredients. You've completed the purge, the first dramatic step. Now comes the phase of rebuilding, strengthening, and ensuring the humors don't swing wildly out of balance in the other direction. This would typically involve follow-up remedies, perhaps gentler ones designed to soothe and nourish rather than violently expel. What strange concoction would await you next? A gruel made from barley and boiled chicken feet, a tonic brewed with spider webs and honey. The thought is enough to make you want to stay on this bench indefinitely, perhaps mummifying yourself in dust rather than face another potential encounter with historical medicine. But you know you can't stay here forever. The need for more thorough recovery, perhaps a proper place to lie down, and the inevitable next steps of historical treatment loom. You found temporary solace, a brief pause in the intensity, but the journey through 17th century healing isn't over. You've survived the cure, but now you must survive the recovery. And that in this era is a whole other adventure in itself. You push yourself up gingerly, the stone bench, feeling like it's trying to hold on to you. Time to face what comes next. You stand there watching as the apothecary finishes grinding the mix he started. The pestle slows the rhythmic thudding, giving way to a soft scraping sound. He scoops the resulting powder or paste into a small, clean jar, or perhaps folds it into a piece of fine cloth. As he does, you catch glimpses of the ingredients that went into your specific remedy. Some look familiar, dried herbs perhaps, or spices you recognize from the market. But others, well, they make your stomach do a small, involuntary flip. He might hold up a pinch of a dark granular powder, letting it sift through his fingers before adding it to the mix. For the fever, he might murmur, or to strengthen the blood. And you nod, trying to look knowledgeable, while inside you're wondering exactly what that dark granular powder is, because it doesn't look like ground roots or bark. It has a different texture, a sort of dusty, irregular quality that makes you think of well-dried things that weren't originally plants. In the world of 17th century apothecaries, especially in a bustling hub like Cairo, the materia medica, the substances used for healing, was vast and incredibly diverse. It wasn't just herbs and minerals. It included all sorts of things that to your modern sensibilities range from merely odd to downright unsettling. You've heard tales maybe dismiss them as exaggerations, but standing here seeing the calm way the apothecary handles these items, you realize the stories were often true. They believed strongly in the principle of sympathy or signature, that an ingredient's appearance or origin could hint at its medicinal use. Lungs for lung ailments, yellow substances for jaundice, and yes, parts of certain animals for qualities they possessed. Perhaps the most famous or infamous of these remedies was mumia, or mummy powder. Yes, exactly what it sounds like. Ground up bits of embalmed human remains. It was used for a staggering array of ailments from broken bones and internal bleeding to coughs, epilepsy, and even the plague. The belief was that the preserving qualities of the embalming spices and resins, combined with the sheer age and perhaps the vital force lingering in the body, made it a potent medicine. It was sourced from ancient Egyptian tombs, initially perhaps from natural bitumen that seeped from the ground, which also got called mumia, but increasingly as the demand grew from actual mummies. There was a whole trade in it, sometimes involving robbing tombs, other times involving creating fakes from the bodies of executed criminals, or even camel meat treated to look like mummy flesh. Imagine the quality control issues there. Excuse me, sir, is this mummy powder ethically sourced, or is it just Bob from down the street? The apothecary might have a small, carefully guarded jar labeled with intricate Arabic script containing this dark, brittle substance. He might measure out a tiny amount with a delicate spoon. Seeing it up close, knowing what it is, sends a shiver down your spine that has nothing to do with your fever. It feels profoundly wrong taking a piece of someone long dead and consuming it. But in this time, it was a widely accepted, albeit sometimes controversial, remedy. A quirky or fringe tidbit, though widely practiced, was the sheer belief in the power of consuming any part of something believed to be strong or long-lasting, extending, even to humans preserved for millennia. Animal parts were equally, if not more common. Dried lizards, powdered snake skins, hyena livers, wolf intestines, crushed scorpions. The list goes on. Each part from each animal was believed to have specific properties. A mainstream historical fact is that zootherapy, the use of animal-derived products in medicine, was a significant component of medical practice across many cultures, including in the Islamic world during this period. Physicians wrote extensively about the properties of different animal substances, often drawing on ancient Greek, Persian, and Indian traditions. Snakeskin, for instance, might be used for skin conditions or to aid in shedding old problems, much like a snake sheds its skin. Crushed scorpions were sometimes applied topically to scorpion stings, like cures, like perhaps, or taken internally for fevers or kidney stones. Hyena parts had various purported uses, sometimes linked to the animal's reputation for scavenging or cunning. As the apothecary mixes, he might add a pinch of a fine gray-white powder. This could be powdered bone, from animals hopefully, but you can't be entirely sure. Bones were believed to strengthen your own bones naturally, but also sometimes used for digestive issues or to stop bleeding. Or perhaps it's a powder made from dried insects like beetles or ants, thought to help with things like bladder problems or vitality. You try not to think too hard about the journey these ingredients took to get here, or the creature they came from. He might reach for a small vial containing a thick, dark liquid. Could it be some kind of animal oil? Snake oil wasn't just a metaphor for quackery, it was a real thing used for muscle aches and flexibility? Or perhaps it's something like civet musk, a powerful smelling secretion from the civet cat used in perfumes, but also in medicine as a stimulant or for nervous conditions. The smell, even a small amount, is potent and complex. You watch his hands steady and practiced as he works. He seems completely unfazed by the nature of the ingredients. To him, they are tools, substances with known properties to be combined in precise ways to achieve a specific effect on the body's humors and vital forces. He sees the potential for healing in a jar of mummy powder just as readily as in a bundle of dried mint. This pragmatic approach is perhaps more unsettling than if he treated these things with some dark reverence. Historians still argue whether the efficacy of these more gruesome remedies was purely psychosomatic due to other active ingredients they were mixed with, or if some contained compounds with genuine, albeit poorly understood, medicinal properties. Could the minerals and resins in mummy powder have had some effect? Did animal parts contain trace elements or compounds that offered benefits? Or was it simply the overwhelming belief, the sheer conviction of the patient and the healer that powered the cure? It's a fascinating, slightly disturbing question that hangs in the air, thick with the scent of strange powders and oils. He might explain briefly the purpose of one ingredient or another, using terms like hot, cold, wet, or dry to describe their properties and how they will counteract the imbalance in your own system. This, he might say, indicating the jar with the dark powder, will cool the excessive heat causing your fever, drawing out the fiery bile. Trying to process this ancient logic, this system that sees the body as a dynamic balance of fundamental qualities, easily disrupted by diet, climate, or even emotion. As he finishes the preparation, putting the lid on the jar or tying the cloth bundle, you feel a mixture of relief that the mixing is done and apprehension about actually taking this concoction. It's one thing to read about these historical remedies. It's another entirely to be presented with a dose intended for you. You came here seeking relief, and he has offered you a solution drawn from the deepest well of his knowledge and the strangest corners of his pharmacy. And now you have to decide if you're brave enough to consume it. He slides a small jar or cloth-wrapped bundle across the counter towards you. It feels surprisingly heavy for its size, dense with compressed powders and maybe tiny fragments you can't quite identify. The smell is intense. Earthy, certainly, with hints of pungent herbs and something else, something mineral or perhaps animalistic, a scent that prickles the back of your nose and makes your eyes water slightly. It's the smell of ancient remedies, of desperate hopes, mixed with strange ingredients from far-flung places or deep, dark tombs. The apothecary begins to give you instructions. His voice is calm, measured, contrasting sharply with the wild nature of his pharmacy. Take a pinch, he might say, demonstrating with his fingers, about this much. You watch, estimating the quantity, trying to remember. A pinch of ground mummy, a pinch of powdered scorpion. You mentally translate it into modern terms, about half a teaspoon. A quarter dosage in this era wasn't always as precise as milligram measurements. It was often based on volume, weight, or even intuition guided by experience. A mainstream historical fact is that standardized dosages and pharmaceutical preparations like modern pills or capsules were still centuries away. Medicines were typically dispensed as raw ingredients to be prepared by the patient, or as simple mixtures, powders and tinctures. He might tell you to mix the powder with a liquid. In warm water, he might instruct, first thing in the morning. Or perhaps mix it with honey to make a paste. The stickiness apparently helping it coat the throat or stomach, or maybe just making it slightly less revolting to swallow. Sometimes instructions involve specific liquids, rose water, vinegar, wine, or even milk, each believed to have its own properties that would either aid or temper the main ingredients. You picture trying to stir that dark granular powder into a cup of water, watching it dissolve slowly, maybe leaving behind little bits that refuse to mix. Lovely. Like a weirdly gritty, death-flavored instant coffee. If it's a paste or a thicker concoction, he might tell you to take it directly off a spoon. You imagine the texture, the taste hitting your tongue. Bitter is a common flavor in historical remedies, often associated with purging or cleansing qualities. But combined with the unique bouquet of his special ingredients, you brace yourself internally. You've taken some pretty gross-tasting cough syrups in your life, but you suspect this is going to redefine gross. This isn't just medicine. It feels like a test of your willingness to be cured. He might also specify when to take it. At the hour of prayer, he might suggest, or just before sleep. Timing wasn't arbitrary. It was often linked to astrological considerations, the movement of celestial bodies, or simply established daily routines. Taking medicine at dawn might harness the rising sun's energy, while taking it at night could work while the body was at rest. There might be instructions about diet, what to eat or avoid while taking the remedy, as food was seen as profoundly affecting the body's humoral balance. Avoid cold foods if you have a hot illness, or wet foods if your humors are excessively wet. Simple, right? Just keep track of your internal temperature, moisture levels, and planetary alignment, and you'll be fine. Sometimes the instructions were even more particular, veering into what you might consider ritual today. A quirky or fringe tidbit often associated with taking these powerful remedies was a specific, often slightly bizarre instruction intended to enhance its efficacy. You might be told to hold your breath while swallowing, or to face a certain direction, or to say a specific phrase, a prayer, a charm, or just the name of the illness you wish to banish. These weren't just superstitions. They were deeply integrated into the holistic view of medicine that combined physical treatment with spiritual and psychological elements. Imagine having to swallow that concoction while whispering, "Begone foul humor," to your own reflection. As he explains, you try to commit it all to memory. Dosage, timing, method of preparation, accompanying rituals. There are no written instructions, no handy leaflet with side effects listed in tiny print, though you suspect the list would be quite long. It's all delivered orally, relying on your memory and trust in his expertise. What happens if you mess it up? Take too much, too little, mix it with the wrong liquid. The thought is unsettling. The line between medicine and poison, especially with such potent and sometimes toxic ingredients, feels incredibly thin. Historians still argue whether the detailed rituals and specific timings associated with taking historical remedies were primarily for psychological effect, enhancing the patient's belief, a way to differentiate quacks from legitimate practitioners, or if they genuinely related to the properties of the ingredients or the body's natural rhythms. Did praying before taking medicine actually help the medicine work? Did facing east matter? These practices were so embedded that separating belief from intended physiological effect is a complex task for modern researchers. You clutch the small package. It feels warm from his hand, or perhaps just from your own anxiety. This is it. You've paid the price, maybe a significant one depending on the rarity of the ingredients, and now you hold the promise of healing. But it's a promise wrapped in powdered bones, ground mummies, and possibly less than fresh animal parts. Your modern brain screams a warning. Don't eat that. It insists. That's literally desecration and potential poisoning. But the part of you that feels unwell, that aches and burns, or whatever brought you here, whispers back. But what if it works? The sheer desperation of being ill in an age without antibiotics, without sterile surgery, without easily digestible pills from a factory, pushes you towards acceptance. When faced with the very real possibility of a prolonged illness, pain, or even death, swallowing something profoundly unpleasant, derived from deeply unsettling sources, suddenly becomes a viable option. You might even find yourself focusing on the positive. The apothecaries' calm confidence, the history behind these remedies, the many people who must have taken them before you. They couldn't all be wrong, could they? Spoiler alert sometimes, yes, they absolutely could be wrong. Very wrong. You nod, indicating you understand the instructions. He gives you a final look, perhaps a word of encouragement, or a stern warning about following the directions precisely. You thank him, the words feeling a little dry in your throat. You've stepped through a door into a different medical landscape, one where the boundaries of what constitutes medicine are far wider and far stranger than you ever imagined. As you turn to leave the cramped, fragrant space, the weight of the remedy in your hand feels like the weight of history itself. Heavy, complex, and full of both potential wonder and lurking danger. You're about to embark on a very personal experiment with the pharmacopoeia of 17th century Cairo. Good luck with that. You step back out onto the bustling street, the clamor of the Cairo market washing over you again. The air outside feels strangely clean compared to the dense, complex aromas of the apothecary's shop, though in reality it's likely thick with dust and animal smells and 1,000 other things. You look down at the small package in your hand, a tangible link to this strange ancient world of healing. You've seen the ingredients, heard the instructions, absorbed the atmosphere of desperate hope and age-old tradition. Now comes the hard part, deciding what to do with it. Holding that packet, you really feel the vast distance between your modern understanding of medicine and the practices of the 17th century. Today, medicine is sterile-regulated mostly and based on clinical trials and molecular biology. Back then, it was a blend of inherited knowledge from Greek-Roman and earlier Islamic physicians, empirical observation, sometimes accurate, sometimes wildly misinterpreted astrological beliefs, spiritual practices, and sheer often brutal trial and error. Think about it. Your local pharmacy today probably doesn't stock powdered gems, animal organs, or bits of ancient corpses. And if they did, you'd probably run screaming. The legacy of earlier medical traditions was incredibly strong. A mainstream historical fact is that physicians and apothecaries in 17th century Cairo and across the wider Islamic world were still deeply reliant on foundational texts like Avicenna's Canon of Medicine, or the works of Galen, often centuries old. These were massive encyclopedic works that covered everything from anatomy and physiology, based on humoral theory, remember the hot, cold, wet, dry stuff, to materia medica, the study of medicinal substances and the treatment of specific diseases. While new observations and remedies were added over time, the basic framework often remained tied to these ancient authorities, which dictated the perceived properties of ingredients and the overall approach to balancing the body's humors. It's like trying to build a modern smartphone using only blueprints for a telegraph. And within that framework, there was immense room for practices that seem utterly bizarre now. You remember the crocodile dung, the mummy powder, the animal fats, the frankly terrifying surgical tools you glimpsed. These weren't just fringe practices. Many were recorded in reputable texts or were common folk remedies. The line between established medicine and folk belief was blurry, and apothecaries often catered to a wide range of practices. A quirky or fringe tidbit that highlights this blend is the inclusion of items used not for ingestion or topical application, but for sympathetic magic or as talismans. An apothecary might sell you a pouch of specific herbs to hang around your neck, to ward off a fever or a charm inscribed with certain words or symbols to protect against the evil eye right alongside the powdered bone remedies. These weren't always seen as separate from physical treatments. They were part of a holistic approach to well-being that addressed the spiritual and energetic body as well as the physical one. So you might leave with your dose of ground, something or other, was and a lucky rabbit's foot if they had rabbits, maybe a lucky camel hoof. Gotta cover all your bases, right? Holding that little package, you might wonder, did any of this stuff actually work? From a modern perspective, the answer is likely a complex mix. Some plant-based remedies might have contained compounds with genuine pharmacological activity, perhaps even effective against certain symptoms or infections, even if the practitioners didn't understand why. Willow bark contains salicylates, the precursor to aspirin. Certain herbs have anti-inflammatory or antiseptic properties, but mixed in with those were inert substances, potentially harmful toxins, and ingredients chosen based on symbolism or superstition rather than effect. Ground mummies, for instance, offered absolutely zero medicinal benefit and were probably just a source of disease. Taking lead-based remedies could definitely cause more problems than they solved. Historians still argue whether the persistence of some of these frankly dangerous or ineffective remedies was due to a lack of alternatives, a deep-seated cultural belief in their efficacy, the placebo effect, or simply the profit motive for apothecaries. Did they truly believe powdered unicorn horn cured everything, or were they just selling what desperate people would buy? Was the recovery of some patients attributed to the most bizarre ingredient in the mix, even if a more mundane herb actually did the work? It's tough to separate genuine, albeit limited understanding from tradition and wishful thinking centuries later. You stand there, the sounds of Cairo receding slightly as you focus on the weight in your hand. This isn't just a historical curiosity. For the person who sought this remedy, it was hope. It was a last resort, perhaps, or a trusted traditional cure passed down through generations. They didn't have peer-reviewed studies or double-blind trials. They had the word of the apothecary, the wisdom of old books, and the desperation that comes with illness in a world without easy answers. Maybe you should just discreetly find a bin or the historical equivalent, probably just the street, and toss it. It's the sensible modern thing to do. Your internal logic insists on it. But the historian in you, the part that wants to understand, that wants to connect with the past, hesitates. It's a powerful artifact representing a medical landscape so alien it feels like science fiction, but it was someone's reality. It embodies the ingenuity, the limitations, the beliefs, and the sheer incredible strangeness of human attempts to conquer illness across time and culture. As you contemplate this, the image of the bustling Cairo street begins to soften, the sharp edges blurring slightly. The vivid smells and sounds start to fade like a dream just before waking. The weight in your hand seems less like a physical object and more like a metaphor representing the long, winding, and often peculiar road humanity has traveled in search of healing. The strange, creepy cure-alls of 17th century Cairo, apothecaries, were a significant stop on that journey, a testament to both enduring medical wisdom and beliefs that to our ears sound utterly fantastical. Now dim the lights a little further, maybe turn down that fan, just slightly if it's on. Let the sounds of the market fade away, completely leaving only the gentle rhythm of your own breath. You've traveled a long way tonight, exploring a distant city and a strange, ancient world of medicine. It's time to leave the powdered mummies and crocodile dung behind, time to let the images of cramped shops and peculiar ingredients dissolve from your mind. Feel yourself coming back to the comfort of your own space, your own time, where pharmacies smell much better and contain far fewer unsettling animal parts. There's nothing more to think about now. No strange concoctions to ponder, no journeys left to take tonight. Just the quiet, the calm, the gentle descent into sleep. Let your body relax, your thoughts slow down, drifting like smoke. You are safe, you are sound, and you are ready to rest. Just breathe softly and let sleep find you.